Illusion of Truth Effect. Have you ever stopped to question something you've believed your entire life, only to discover it was never actually true? It's not fantasy or fiction. It's a genuine psychological phenomenon called the illusion of truth effect. This subtle yet powerful mental trick operates by reshaping our beliefs without our conscious awareness. Simply put, the more often you hear something, even if it's completely false, the more likely you are to accept it as an absolute truth. Here's how it works. Your brain naturally favors familiar ideas because familiarity feels safe and trustworthy. Every repeated statement you hear becomes slightly more persuasive each time, quietly convincing your subconscious mind that it must be accurate. Before long, repetition alone turns misinformation into facts your mind confidently accepts, bypassing your natural skepticism. Take the common myth you've probably encountered. Humans only use 10% of their brains. You've seen it appear countless times on social media, movies, and maybe even in classrooms. Initially, skepticism might arise. Is that really true? But as this statement keeps popping up again and again, your subconscious gradually shifts. Familiarity breeds acceptance, making it easier to assume it's valid without any real proof. The fascinating reality is that neuroscience has thoroughly disproven this myth. Brain scans repeatedly confirm that humans utilize nearly every part of their brains daily. Yet, despite clear scientific evidence, millions continue to accept this falsehood simply because it's frequently repeated. This exemplifies precisely how effective the illusion of truth effect can be at embedding misinformation into our collective beliefs. What makes this psychological phenomenon especially powerful is that your brain naturally seeks shortcuts. Verifying every piece of information presented to you would be mentally exhausting. Thus, your mind takes comfort in ideas you've heard repeatedly because familiarity feels simpler and safer. Each additional exposure solidifies the false claim, turning repetition itself into a convincing argument. Businesses, politicians, and media figures regularly exploit this tactic, fully aware of its persuasive power. Brands use repetitive advertising slogans, subtly convincing consumers their products are superior, even without concrete evidence. Politicians constantly repeat statements or catchy phrases, knowing that repetition alone makes their messages believable. This pervasive technique influences voting behavior, consumer choices, and even personal relationships. But why is understanding this so important? Because the illusion of truth effect can shape entire communities, sway public opinion, and guide critical decisions, often based on falsehoods. Repeated misinformation can dictate how societies function, influencing laws, public policies, and social norms. It becomes essential, then, to approach frequently repeated claims with intentional skepticism and caution. Protecting yourself from this phenomenon starts with active awareness. Develop a habit of questioning information, particularly claims you encounter repeatedly. Take a moment to independently verify anything that sounds suspicious or overly familiar. Examine the sources of your beliefs, especially if they originate from questionable or unverified places. By consciously choosing skepticism over blind acceptance, you regain control over your perceptions. Awareness helps you break the illusion and avoid accepting comfortable falsehoods just because they're repeated constantly. Truth doesn't rely on repetition. It relies on evidence and critical thinking. Recognizing the illusion of truth effect allows you to distinguish authentic facts from seductive myths, giving you the freedom to form genuinely informed opinions rather than passively accepting whatever you've been repeatedly told. Self-reference effect. Have you ever noticed how effortlessly certain memories stick in your mind while others vanish almost immediately? There's a hidden psychological secret behind this selective memory, and it's known as the self-reference effect. This mental shortcut quietly shapes your perception of the world, by making personal connections your brain's top priority. It means that whenever information relates directly to your own experiences, thoughts, or identity, your brain is primed to remember it vividly, far more than neutral or impersonal facts. This powerful cognitive bias occurs because your mind is fundamentally self-centered, not selfish, but naturally wired to pay attention to information directly linked to you. From your brain's perspective, personal relevance equals importance, prompting heightened activity in memory-forming areas. Simply put, if something matters personally, your mind automatically tags it as valuable, boosting your chances of remembering it clearly. Consider this situation. You're at a crowded social gathering, engaged in various casual conversations. Throughout the evening, you hear numerous facts, names, and details, most of which you'll forget by tomorrow. But suddenly, you overhear someone mentioning your name from across the room. In an instant, your attention shifts dramatically. Your mind snaps awake, hyper-focused on the distant conversation, even though moments before you couldn't distinguish one discussion from another. What happened there was your brain utilizing the self-reference effect. Among countless words and noises, it instantly recognized your name as personally meaningful information. Consequently, your mind captured this moment in high definition, storing it in memory with remarkable clarity. By contrast, most other information from the evening vanished quickly, deemed irrelevant by your subconscious. This psychological trick profoundly shapes your daily decisions and interactions. Marketers capitalize on this effect by personalizing advertising campaigns, using your name or experiences to capture your attention and enhance product recall. Social media platforms exploit it too, constantly showing content tailored specifically to your interests and identity, ensuring you remain engaged and attentive. But the self-reference effect isn't limited to memory. It can transform learning entirely. Suppose you're studying for an exam. You read page after page of dull textbook material, struggling to absorb abstract theories and impersonal facts. But what if you actively connected each concept to a personal experience or familiar scenario from your life, perhaps linking historical events to stories your grandparents told or applying psychological theories to your own behaviors? Suddenly, those concepts become easy to grasp, vividly memorable, and deeply meaningful. This effect explains why educators consistently encourage students to relate new information directly to themselves. It transforms forgettable facts into unforgettable knowledge. Yet, there's a hidden downside to this self-focused mental bias. Your brain's selective attention to personally relevant information can unintentionally create blind spots, causing you to overlook vital details simply because they don't seem immediately relatable. It can limit your perspective, distorting reality based solely on personal relevance rather than objective truth. Awareness, however, grants you power. Recognizing the self-reference effect enables you to harness its potential consciously, improving memory, sharpening learning strategies, and understanding your perceptions. Simultaneously, it helps you guard against cognitive blind spots, reminding you to actively seek perspectives beyond your immediate experiences. In essence, your brain isn't just recording life passively, it's continuously reshaping reality around your own identity. Knowing this changes how you interact with the world, offering the keys to deeper insights, stronger memories, and more meaningful connections. Next time something effortlessly sticks in your mind, pause and reflect. Perhaps your subconscious found a personal connection, quietly guiding your memory and subtly revealing how intricately self-focused your perception truly is. Ben Franklin Effect. Did you know there's a subtle psychological trick that can change how people feel about you, not by doing something kind for them, but by asking them to do something kind for you? It sounds counterintuitive, yet it's precisely what Benjamin Franklin discovered centuries ago. This intriguing psychological phenomenon is known as the Ben Franklin Effect. and it reveals that when someone does a favor for you, they actually grow to like you more, not less. You might think that to win someone's affection or respect, you must shower them with gifts or acts of kindness. But in reality, human psychology doesn't always work in such straightforward ways. Franklin stumbled onto this fascinating concept entirely by accident. In the 18th century, Franklin had a political rival, a man who disliked him so deeply that it created tension whenever their paths crossed. Franklin, a clever observer of human behavior, decided on an unusual strategy. Rather than attempting to win his opponent's favor through flattery or generosity, he instead asked the man to lend him a rare book from his personal library. Surprisingly, the rival agreed. He loaned Franklin the valuable book, which Franklin soon returned with a heartfelt note of gratitude. From that moment onward, their dynamic shifted dramatically. The former adversary began treating Franklin warmly, eventually evolving into a trusted ally and lifelong friend. Franklin realized something fascinating. By asking his rival for a favor, he had unconsciously triggered a psychological shift, causing the man to justify his own kindness by reshaping his feelings towards Franklin himself. So why does this unexpected tactic work? It comes down to something psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When we perform an action that conflicts with our existing attitudes, our brains feel uncomfortable. To ease this discomfort, we subconsciously shift our feelings or beliefs to align with our actions. In the case of Franklin's rival, lending the book created internal tension. I dislike Franklin, yet I'm helping him. To resolve this inconsistency, the man subconsciously adjusted his opinion. Perhaps Franklin isn't so bad after all. This subtle shift is incredibly powerful in everyday life, allowing you to build trust, friendships, or alliances with people who might initially seem distant or skeptical. Imagine starting a new job, and there's a coworker who's consistently cold toward you. Instead of desperately trying to impress them, you gently ask for a small, meaningful favor, perhaps requesting their expertise or advice on something simple. In doing so, they help you, which silently encourages them to reframe their perspective of you. Before long, their cold demeanor softens, replaced by openness and warmth. Of course, this effect isn't about manipulating or tricking people. It's about understanding and harnessing the deeper complexities of human nature to create authentic connections. When someone willingly invests their time or resources into helping you, even minimally, they naturally convince themselves that you are worth their effort. This leads to genuine rapport and deeper bonds, built not through superficial gestures, but through genuine engagement. Understanding the Ben Franklin effect means recognizing that human emotions and behaviors aren't always logical. They're fluid, adaptable, and shaped by our own actions. It teaches you the power of vulnerability and genuine interaction over empty flattery or excessive generosity. The next time you face tension or distance in a relationship, personal or professional, consider Franklin's wisdom. Don't just offer assistance, humbly ask for it. You'll be amazed at how quickly attitudes can change, friendships can blossom, and rivals can become allies, all because you understood and skillfully applied one of psychology's most surprising and effective tricks, Prattfall Effect. There's something oddly reassuring about watching someone successful stumble slightly, reveal a flaw, or even make a minor mistake. It's as though in that brief instant, their humanity shines through, and suddenly you like them more, not less. This surprising psychological phenomenon is called the Prattfall Effect, and it quietly shapes your perception of people every single day. At first, this effect might seem puzzling. Wouldn't revealing flaws or imperfections harm someone's image rather than enhance it? Interestingly, research shows exactly the opposite. People who demonstrate competence and capability but occasionally slip up become significantly more likable and relatable in our eyes. This occurs because deep down, perfection feels suspicious and intimidating to us. Seeing a small mistake or vulnerability in another person allows us to connect with them on a deeper emotional level, breaking down barriers of insecurity or envy. Picture this scenario. You're at a professional conference, watching a renowned speaker deliver a flawless presentation. Their expertise is clear, their delivery impeccable, yet something feels distant or detached. Suddenly, the presenter stumbles over their words, laughs nervously, and jokes, "Well, clearly I need more coffee." The audience bursts into laughter, tension eases, and the speaker instantly becomes more approachable and engaging. In that one brief moment, the speaker transformed from an untouchable authority figure into a relatable human being, someone you now find yourself rooting for. But why does your brain respond this way? It's rooted in your innate desire for connection and authenticity. Perfection can seem artificial or intimidating, creating emotional distance between yourself and others. When someone competent demonstrates minor imperfections or vulnerabilities, you feel closer and safer around them. Their mistakes humanize them, reminding you that no matter their accomplishments, they share common human struggles. Businesses frequently tap into this powerful psychological trick. Advertisements often portray otherwise flawless characters making humorous mistakes, spilling coffee, fumbling awkwardly, to foster relatability and build customer trust. Celebrities share self-deprecating moments online to seem approachable and genuine, dramatically increasing fan engagement. Politicians purposefully highlight their humble beginnings or embarrassing anecdotes, subtly shaping public perceptions through the Prattfall Effect. However, there's a critical balance required for this psychological phenomenon to work effectively. For the Prattfall Effect to enhance someone's image, the individual must first be perceived as competent. If someone constantly makes mistakes or appears incompetent from the outset, further errors only reinforce negative impressions rather than improving likability. In other words, occasional slips create warmth and approachability, while repeated blunders breed doubt and mistrust. Recognizing this subtle psychological dynamic gives you significant power in your personal and professional interactions. If you find yourself intimidated by someone successful or admired, remind yourself they're human too, likely hiding their own struggles and vulnerabilities. Conversely, allowing others to see your minor mistakes or acknowledging imperfections openly can dramatically improve how you're perceived, fostering genuine connection and trust. Ultimately, the Prattfall Effect reveals a comforting truth about human nature. We genuinely prefer authenticity to perfection. Your brain is constantly seeking out genuine human connections, craving sincerity and honesty over unattainable ideals. Knowing this helps you embrace your own flaws confidently and warmly, transforming what you might perceive as embarrassing imperfections into opportunities to connect deeply and meaningfully with those around you. After all, in a world obsessed with perfection, your most relatable quality might just be your willingness to show the beautifully human imperfections hidden behind the polished exterior. Reactance Theory. The moment someone tells you that something is off limits, your desire for it instantly multiplies. It's a puzzling yet universal human behavior, one that psychology explains as Reactance Theory. This intriguing mental principle reveals that people instinctively resist any threat to their freedom, often becoming fixated on precisely what they're told they can't have or do. Your brain cherishes autonomy. It craves the feeling of being free to choose, act, and live without interference. When this freedom feels threatened or restricted, a powerful internal rebellion arises. The more explicitly someone tries to limit your options, the more intensely you focus on reclaiming that lost freedom, even if the issue seems trivial. Suddenly, your mind views the forbidden object or action as uniquely valuable, fueling an almost irrational determination to attain it. Imagine a sunny afternoon stroll in a park. there's a freshly painted bench, clearly marked with a bold sign, "Do not touch, wet paint." Despite the clarity of the message and the common sense behind it, a sudden urge arises to check the bench anyway, to see if it's truly wet. Rationally, there's no good reason to risk staining your fingers, yet your brain rebels. The mere existence of the sign activates reactance theory, transforming a mundane piece of park furniture into an irresistible temptation. This mental tug-of-war exemplifies precisely how strongly your subconscious resists restrictions. Advertisers and marketers frequently harness reactance theory, subtly manipulating perceptions by creating artificial scarcity or exclusivity, limited edition, only a few left, or restricted access labels trigger an urgent sense of threatened freedom. Products that were previously ordinary suddenly become exceptionally appealing, simply because their availability appears restricted. You're not just purchasing a product anymore, you're asserting your independence by reclaiming freedom you perceive as under attack. Reactance theory profoundly shapes relationships as well. Consider teenagers who fiercely rebel against strict rules from parents or authority figures. A harsh command like "you're forbidden from going out tonight" rarely achieves obedience. Instead, it intensifies the teenager's resolve to push back against perceived control. By contrast, offering gentle alternatives or choices, such as "finish your homework first and then you can go out," maintains the teenager's sense of freedom, dramatically reducing resistance. Recognizing the power of reactance theory transforms the way you communicate. Instead of resorting to strict prohibitions, shifting to suggestive language or providing appealing alternatives reduces reactance significantly. Rather than provoking rebellion through rigid commands, guiding someone gently toward favorable outcomes increases the likelihood of cooperation and agreement. This psychological principle isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding and respecting human nature. Humans naturally desire freedom and react negatively to threats against it. Understanding this truth helps you foster deeper trust and positive interactions, rather than accidentally provoking resistance. By embracing autonomy rather than stifling it, you encourage cooperation, goodwill, and genuine respect. Ultimately, reactance theory offers profound insights into the intricacies of human behavior. It demonstrates how fiercely humans protect their freedom and how quickly they resist perceived restrictions. Knowing this allows you to navigate social interactions and decisions more skillfully, turning potential conflicts into opportunities for positive influence and mutual respect. Remember, the key to influencing others lies not in controlling their choices, but in skillfully respecting their freedom. Reactance theory teaches you that sometimes the best way to get someone to agree isn't by restricting them, but by respecting their autonomy, gently guiding them toward the choice you hope they'll make willingly. Zygarnic Effect. Your brain can't stand unfinished business. It's drawn instinctively toward open loops and incomplete tasks, constantly reminding you about them, sometimes relentlessly. This powerful psychological force is known as the Zygarnic Effect, and it silently shapes your behavior every day, often without you even realizing it. The Zygarnic Effect states that people remember unfinished tasks far better than completed ones. Once you start something and leave it incomplete, your brain labels it as important and continually prompts you to finish it. Completed tasks, on the other hand, lose their psychological urgency. Your mind promptly files them away, forgetting their details to make room for new information. To illustrate this, picture yourself at a restaurant. You place your order, the server takes it, remembers everything clearly, and rushes to the kitchen. However, moments after delivering your food, that same server might struggle to recall what you ordered if asked again. Why does this happen? Before serving, your order was an open loop, a task incomplete, so it lingered vividly in their memory. Once served, the task closed, fading quickly from the server's mind. This is exactly the scenario psychologist Bluma Zygarnic first observed in the 1920s, noticing waiters remembered open orders perfectly, but promptly forgot them once the bill was paid. Why does your brain operate this way? Your subconscious prioritizes unfinished tasks as a survival mechanism, ensuring you don't neglect critical actions that could threaten your well-being. It's an internal alert system, repeatedly nudging your mind until the issue is resolved. This mechanism often becomes evident at inconvenient times, like when you're trying to relax but keep recalling unanswered emails or incomplete projects. Your mind simply refuses to let them go until closure is achieved. Advertisers and storytellers frequently exploit this psychological principle. Television shows masterfully employ cliffhangers, deliberately ending episodes with unresolved tension. Your mind, desperate for closure, urges you to tune in next week or binge watch the next episode immediately. Advertisements tease partial information, hooking your curiosity until you take action to complete the loop. You can harness the Zygarnic Effect strategically, transforming it from a distraction into a productivity superpower. If you're procrastinating on a crucial task, simply beginning it, even slightly, triggers this powerful psychological principle. Your mind, uncomfortable with leaving things incomplete, will continually nudge you toward finishing it. Writing just a few sentences of an important report or initiating the first steps of a project ensures your subconscious keeps reminding you to complete it, dramatically boosting productivity. However, the Zygarnic Effect also has a downside. Constantly ruminating over unfinished tasks can lead to anxiety, stress, or burnout. Your mind becomes cluttered with incomplete loops, each demanding attention simultaneously. Learning to manage this phenomenon becomes critical for mental health. Clearly writing down tasks, setting realistic goals, or consciously acknowledging incomplete loops can relieve mental tension, allowing your mind to temporarily rest. Ultimately, understanding the Zygarnic Effect gives you a powerful insight into how your mind organizes, remembers, and prioritizes tasks. It explains why certain activities linger vividly in your memory, while others fade quickly. By strategically initiating tasks you want to complete and consciously closing loops that cause anxiety, you take control of your psychological state, transforming your natural desire for completion into a powerful motivational tool. Your brain's obsession with unfinished business is not just a psychological quirk, it's an invaluable secret weapon. Recognizing and mastering the Zygarnic Effect can dramatically improve your productivity, reduce stress, and grant you powerful insight into your own mind, harnessing your brain's natural tendencies to achieve clarity, focus, and success. Anchoring bias. Your mind, despite its remarkable abilities, is surprisingly susceptible to subtle manipulations. One powerful psychological phenomenon at play is known as anchoring bias, and it quietly shapes decisions in every area of your life. Anchoring bias occurs when your brain relies too heavily on the first piece of information encountered, the anchor, when making decisions, causing subsequent judgments to skew toward that initial reference point. The anchor can be any number, detail, or idea introduced early on, subtly yet powerfully influencing your perception. Once your mind latches onto an anchor, it becomes incredibly difficult to adjust away from it, even if logic or reason suggests otherwise. Anchoring often occurs without your conscious awareness, making its impact even more potent. Consider shopping for a used car. The salesperson begins negotiations by mentioning an extremely high initial price, far beyond your budget and clearly inflated. Rationally, you know this price isn't realistic, yet your mind fixates on that inflated figure. As negotiations progress, the price gradually lowers, eventually settling at a number slightly above your intended budget. Because your brain anchored onto the initial exaggerated price, you feel relieved, perhaps even victorious, for negotiating downward. But in reality, you've likely paid more than you intended, simply because your perception was skewed by the original anchor. Anchoring bias explains why first impressions matter profoundly, often disproportionately shaping your view of people, products, or ideas. Even irrelevant information can serve as anchors, distorting perceptions in subtle ways. In a classic psychological study, participants spun a wheel rigged to land randomly on either a high or low number, then immediately estimated the percentage of African nations in the United Nations. Surprisingly, participants anchored by high numbers gave significantly higher estimates than those anchored by low numbers, completely unrelated yet dramatically influencing their judgment. Marketers consistently exploit anchoring bias to subtly shape consumer perceptions. Stores often showcase expensive products first, establishing a mental anchor that makes subsequent prices seem affordable in comparison. Original price tags next to discounted items anchor your perception of value, creating the illusion of significant savings and dramatically boosting purchasing decisions. Anchoring isn't limited to numbers and prices. It affects opinions and judgments too. Political debates, for instance, often begin with exaggerated claims or extreme positions, setting anchors that skew how people evaluate more moderate stances later on. Once anchored, shifting perspectives becomes extraordinarily difficult, even when presented with clear evidence to the contrary. Understanding anchoring bias offers powerful insights, enabling you to recognize and resist subtle manipulations. Becoming aware that your brain naturally clings to the first piece of information helps you pause and question initial impressions critically. When negotiating salaries, purchasing products, or evaluating important decisions, deliberately setting your own anchor rather than letting others set it puts you in control. To combat anchoring bias, consciously disregard initial information until you've independently evaluated the issue. Seek alternative reference points, actively questioning the validity of the first impression or piece of data presented. Awareness alone reduces vulnerability, empowering you to make more rational, informed decisions rather than reacting instinctively to manipulated anchors. Ultimately, anchoring bias reveals a critical truth about human cognition. Your mind consistently seeks shortcuts, clinging tightly to initial reference points rather than continuously recalibrating perspectives. Knowing this psychological quirk allows you to skillfully navigate decisions, interactions, and evaluations. It transforms you from a passive participant, blindly influenced by initial anchors, into an informed decision maker, confidently setting your own anchors, shaping your perceptions intentionally rather than accidentally. In the subtle dance of persuasion, knowing how anchoring bias works gives you clarity, control, and confidence, freeing you from manipulation, empowering informed choices, and fundamentally changing how you view the world around you. Decoy Effect. Your choices aren't always as independent as you think. They're subtly manipulated by a powerful psychological tactic known as the Decoy Effect. This intriguing strategy involves introducing a third, less attractive option, the decoy, to influence your preference between two main choices. Without realizing it, you fall into a carefully constructed trap, feeling you've made an informed decision when, in reality, you've been guided to choose exactly what someone else wanted. Here's how it works. When faced with two options that seem equally appealing, making a confident choice becomes difficult. But if a third, clearly inferior option is introduced, it shifts your perception. Suddenly, one of the original choices seems far more attractive in comparison to the decoy, simplifying your decision. This subtle manipulation happens subconsciously, guiding your choices without ever alerting you to the psychological maneuver. Imagine you're at the movies, buying popcorn. Initially, you're presented with two options, a small popcorn for $3 or a large popcorn for $7. You're unsure. The large seems pricey, but the small might not be enough. Then you notice a medium-sized popcorn listed for $6.50. At first glance, this medium option appears strangely expensive, only slightly cheaper than the large but significantly more expensive than the small. Without thinking, you quickly choose the large popcorn, believing you've made a sensible decision based on value, but you've just fallen victim to the decoy effect. The medium-sized popcorn wasn't there to sell itself. It existed solely to steer your choice toward the large, more expensive option. By making the large popcorn seem like the best value compared to the deliberately unattractive decoy, the cinema skillfully guided your decision, boosting their profits without ever forcing your hand. Marketers and businesses commonly employ this effect because it reliably nudges consumers toward more profitable choices. Restaurants cleverly place premium-priced dishes alongside slightly cheaper but significantly less appealing options. Electronic stores present products with nearly identical features at differing prices, ensuring the more profitable choice feels irresistible when contrasted against the strategically placed decoy. Why does your brain fall so easily for this psychological trick? It's because your mind naturally simplifies complex decisions by comparing options directly rather than evaluating each individually. When an obvious decoy is added, it transforms a difficult choice into an easy one. Your brain, always seeking simplicity, happily embraces the now obvious best option without realizing it's been subtly manipulated. Understanding the decoy effect helps you reclaim control over your decision-making. Once aware of this tactic, you can pause, step back, and question why each option exists. Is there an option placed solely to make another seem more attractive? Asking yourself this question ensures you're making choices based on genuine needs rather than subtle psychological manipulation. You can also use this knowledge to improve your own presentations or negotiations. When you want someone to favor a particular choice, introducing a carefully constructed decoy can gently guide their perception without overt pressure. However, always exercise ethical caution. Manipulation, even subtle, should be done transparently and fairly, enhancing genuine value rather than deceiving others. The decoy effect reveals a powerful truth about human psychology. Your choices are deeply influenced by subtle context and comparison. By becoming aware of how your brain instinctively simplifies decisions, you gain the ability to recognize manipulation and guard yourself against it. You'll no longer make subconscious choices guided by cleverly positioned decoys. Instead, you'll make deliberate, informed decisions rooted in authentic evaluation. Recognizing and mastering the decoy effect provides clarity and empowerment. You'll see through hidden manipulations, confidently reclaiming your ability to choose freely. Instead of passively accepting decisions subtly, guided by others, you'll regain true autonomy, making decisions consciously, authentically, and independently. IKEA Effect. Your attachment to things isn't always rational. It often deepens dramatically when you've personally invested effort into creating or assembling them. This remarkable psychological phenomenon, known as the IKEA Effect, reveals how people place disproportionately higher value on objects they've partially or completely built themselves. Named after the popular furniture retailer famous for its self-assembly products, the IKEA Effect explains why those shelves you painstakingly put together seem far more precious than they would if purchased fully assembled. The fascinating part about the IKEA Effect is how subtly and unconsciously it influences your feelings and perceptions. When you build something yourself, even something as simple as assembling a basic bookshelf, your brain registers the effort, energy, and time invested. It links your identity and sense of accomplishment directly to the object, transforming it from a generic item into something uniquely valuable and personally meaningful. Imagine spending a weekend assembling a complicated desk from IKEA. At first glance, the scattered pieces, cryptic instructions, and tiny tools seem daunting, perhaps even frustrating. But gradually, piece by piece, you painstakingly bring the desk together. Each screw tightened, each board connected, represents tangible evidence of your effort. Once completed, this desk doesn't just represent a functional object, it symbolizes your time, patience, and capability. Suddenly, that modest piece of furniture feels uniquely precious. Even minor imperfections or slight mistakes, rather than diminishing its value, further deepen your emotional attachment because they reflect your personal investment and authenticity. This psychological attachment is precisely why many individuals stubbornly hold onto furniture they've assembled, refusing to part with it even when newer, superior options become available. Your brain equates personal investment with inherent worth, making it difficult, sometimes emotionally impossible, to discard or replace items you've put effort into creating. Businesses cleverly exploit the IKEA effect by offering customizable or partially assembled products. Companies selling meal kits or DIY craft sets harness this principle by making consumers feel deeply connected to products they've personally completed. Even simple baking mixes that require adding eggs and water cleverly create a sense of accomplishment and personalization, dramatically increasing emotional value and customer satisfaction. But why does your brain attach so strongly to self-made objects? It comes down to your fundamental need for competence, control, and accomplishment. Assembling something yourself satisfies these core psychological desires. Your mind associates the physical object with your own abilities and identity, creating powerful emotional connections that elevate ordinary items into meaningful treasures. Awareness of the IKEA effect can significantly improve how you approach possessions and purchases. Understanding this phenomenon allows you to consciously recognize why certain objects hold excessive emotional weight. It can help you declutter objectively, evaluating belongings by genuine usefulness rather than emotional attachment derived solely from personal effort. At the same time, understanding the IKEA effect allows you to harness its power positively. Actively engaging in creating or assembling items fosters deep satisfaction, pride, and emotional fulfillment. Whether cooking homemade meals, gardening, or crafting projects, intentionally choosing activities involving personal effort strengthens emotional bonds, enhances happiness, and provides meaningful, lasting fulfillment. Ultimately, the IKEA effect reveals a beautiful insight about human nature. True value arises not simply from owning something, but from investing oneself into it. Your brain doesn't merely appreciate finished objects. It cherishes the personal journey involved in their creation. Recognizing this powerful psychological principle empowers you to navigate decisions, choices, and emotional attachments more consciously, intentionally, and wisely. By understanding why self-made items feel so special, you gain a deeper appreciation for your own efforts, accomplishments, and identity. You'll no longer view assembled furniture or handmade projects simply as possessions, but as reflections of your unique self, richly layered with meaning, emotion, and personal fulfillment. Misattribution of arousal. Your emotions are more deceptive than you might realize, often leading you to mistakenly attribute the cause of your feelings to the wrong source entirely. This subtle yet powerful psychological phenomenon is called misattribution of arousal, and it quietly shapes your experiences and relationships, frequently without your conscious awareness. Misattribution of arousal occurs when your mind incorrectly identifies the true reason behind emotional or physical sensations, attributing feelings generated by one source to an entirely different, unrelated cause. Essentially, your brain misinterprets physiological reactions such as increased heart rate, sweaty palms, or feelings of excitement and anxiety, assigning them to something unrelated to the actual trigger. This error in judgment profoundly influences how you perceive events, situations, and even other people. Consider a classic psychological study. Researchers placed men onto a shaky, unstable suspension bridge that generated genuine feelings of fear and anxiety. Immediately after crossing, these men encountered an attractive female researcher who asked them to complete a survey and provided her phone number for follow-up questions. Interestingly, men who crossed the precarious bridge were significantly more likely to call the woman afterward compared to men who met her after crossing a stable, secure bridge. Why did this happen? The intense physical sensations triggered by crossing the unstable bridge, rapid heartbeat, adrenaline rush, nervous excitement, were mistakenly interpreted by the men as romantic attraction toward the woman. Their brains misattributed the arousal created by fear and danger, convincing them that the powerful emotions were caused by the researcher's presence. This misattribution dramatically influenced their subsequent behavior, leading them to pursue the woman romantically. Misattribution of arousal frequently shapes everyday interactions, subtly influencing relationships, attractions, and decisions. For example, imagine going on a thrilling roller coaster ride with someone you've just started dating. The adrenaline rush and excitement from the ride, accelerated heart rate, flushed skin, heightened senses can easily become confused with romantic attraction toward your companion. Without realizing it, your brain misinterprets physiological responses caused by the roller coaster's thrill, amplifying your perceived emotional connection with the other person. Suddenly, a simple date becomes intensely memorable, dramatically deepening your perceived attraction and bond. Businesses, entertainment venues, and even event planners often leverage this psychological phenomenon intentionally. Horror movies strategically heighten physiological arousal through fear and tension, intensifying viewers' emotional connections with characters or even their companions. Concerts, sports events, and adventurous activities deliberately generate adrenaline and excitement, creating lasting emotional memories and deepening bonds among participants. Understanding misattribution of arousal helps you navigate your emotional responses with greater insight. Recognizing that your mind can incorrectly attribute intense feelings to unrelated sources allows you to pause and critically assess your reactions. When experiencing strong emotions, whether attraction, fear, excitement, or anxiety, consider what environmental or situational factors might genuinely be contributing. Ask yourself if your feelings reflect authentic connections or are simply physiological reactions being mistakenly assigned. This awareness proves especially powerful in relationships. By acknowledging misattribution of arousal, you better distinguish genuine romantic attraction from feelings intensified by external circumstances. It helps you consciously build relationships on authentic connections rather than fleeting emotional misinterpretations. Ultimately, misattribution of arousal offers a profound insight into human psychology. Your emotions and physiological reactions are deeply intertwined, yet surprisingly easy to confuse. Knowing this helps you approach emotional experiences thoughtfully and deliberately, avoiding common misunderstandings or impulsive decisions based solely on misinterpreted sensations. In short, your mind frequently mislabels powerful emotions, often without you realizing it. Understanding misattribution of arousal empowers you to clarify genuine feelings from subtle psychological misinterpretations, guiding you toward more authentic connections, meaningful decisions, and deeper self-awareness. Recognizing this subtle yet influential psychological phenomenon forever shifts your understanding of emotions, relationships, and even yourself. Spotlight Effect. Your mind frequently tricks you into believing you're under intense scrutiny, imagining that everyone around you notices your every misstep, flaw, or embarrassing moment. This psychological phenomenon is known as the spotlight effect, and it's remarkably effective at convincing you that you're constantly in the public eye, magnifying your self-consciousness and anxiety far beyond reality. The spotlight effect is essentially your brain's tendency to overestimate how much others pay attention to your actions, appearance, or behaviors. You become convinced that everyone around you immediately notices and silently judges every minor mistake or embarrassing moment. In reality, however, people rarely observe you as intensely as you imagine. They're generally far too preoccupied with their own thoughts, worries, and insecurities to focus extensively on yours. Consider a common scenario. You're attending a social gathering, dressed comfortably and feeling confident. Halfway through the evening, you accidentally spill a drink, creating a noticeable stain on your shirt. Your brain immediately goes into panic mode, assuming everyone in the room saw the mishap and is now silently judging you. You feel mortified, certain that this small accident has ruined your reputation for the entire evening. But in truth, most people barely noticed the spill, and even if they did, they quickly forgot about it, focusing instead on their own conversations and concerns. This inflated perception of being watched comes from your brain's egocentric bias, a natural tendency to believe you're at the center of others' attention. Your mind automatically assumes people notice your every move because you are acutely aware of yourself. Yet others, with their own lives and internal dialogues, rarely pay close attention to your actions. One classic psychological study powerfully illustrates the spotlight effect. Researchers asked participants to enter a room wearing a shirt with a large, potentially embarrassing image prominently displayed. Participants consistently estimated that at least half the people present noticed and remembered the shirt. However, in reality, only a small fraction of observers actually recalled noticing anything unusual. The difference between perceived and actual observation was dramatic, clearly demonstrating how powerfully your mind exaggerates others' attention. Businesses frequently exploit this phenomenon by subtly emphasizing social judgment in advertisements, implying everyone notices minor imperfections, like wrinkles, stains, or bad breath, and judges them harshly. This approach heightens anxiety, nudging you toward purchasing products designed to prevent embarrassment or maintain social approval. Understanding the spotlight effect offers powerful emotional freedom. Once you realize others rarely notice or remember your minor mistakes, you become significantly less self-conscious. This awareness allows you to relax, authentically express yourself, and take healthy risks without constant fear of judgment. The spotlight effect also offers profound lessons in empathy, recognizing that everyone experiences similar feelings of exaggerated scrutiny and insecurity makes you kinder, less judgmental, and more compassionate toward others. You understand that most people are far too consumed by their own insecurities to judge you harshly, because they too imagine everyone else is watching and critiquing their every move. When your brain next insists you're being intensely observed, remind yourself of the spotlight effect. Pause and challenge this assumption. Realize that people are far more forgiving, forgetful, and focused on themselves than your anxious mind claims. This realization reduces unnecessary anxiety, enabling you to move through life more confidently and comfortably. Ultimately, the spotlight effect reveals an empowering truth. You aren't being constantly watched, judged, or evaluated as harshly as your mind suggests. Your anxieties about public scrutiny are overwhelmingly illusions generated by your self-focused brain. Freeing yourself from this exaggerated self-consciousness lets you engage with the world openly, confidently, and authentically, forever shifting your perspective about social interactions, personal embarrassment, and human nature itself. Bystander Effect. There's a haunting paradox in human psychology. The more people who witness an emergency, the less likely it is that anyone will actually step forward to help. This unsettling psychological phenomenon is known as the bystander effect, a powerful force that subtly shapes human behavior, often with tragic consequences. It reveals that our instinct to rely on others in moments of crisis can paralyze us, making us passive observers rather than active helpers. The bystander effect operates on the principle that when you're surrounded by other people, responsibility feels diffused, spread thin across each observer. Your brain instinctively assumes that someone else will step forward, someone better suited or braver, someone more qualified to intervene. But when everyone shares this mindset, nobody acts. This mental stalemate can tragically prevent assistance in emergencies, as each person waits for someone else to make the first move. Consider a crowded street where someone suddenly collapses to the ground. Dozens of pedestrians witness the event, each clearly aware something's wrong. Yet, strangely, no one rushes immediately to help. Each individual consciously or subconsciously thinks, surely someone else has already called an ambulance, or someone else knows first aid. As precious moments pass, observers hesitate, frozen by uncertainty and social pressure, unwilling or unable to act decisively. Eventually, a single person steps forward, but often only after critical time has been lost. One of the most infamous examples of the bystander effect is the tragic 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese in New York City. Kitty was attacked outside her apartment, and numerous neighbors reportedly witnessed or heard the crime unfolding. Shockingly, despite hearing her desperate cries for help, almost no one intervened or even called the authorities immediately. Each neighbor later explained their inaction by believing someone else would surely step in or had already called the police. Kitty's tragic death became symbolic of how deeply the bystander effect can influence even compassionate, responsible individuals. The bystander effect isn't limited to dramatic emergencies. It manifests subtly every day. At work, witnessing unethical behavior, yet assuming someone else will report it. In public spaces, ignoring strangers clearly in distress, trusting another passerby to assist instead. Social media further amplifies this effect, as online users frequently see disturbing content, yet hesitate to intervene, assuming someone else will step forward. Understanding the bystander effect empowers you to consciously overcome it. When witnessing emergencies or distress, remind yourself explicitly that everyone around you may also be hesitating, waiting for someone to act first. Actively reject the instinct to defer responsibility to others. Take action yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable or risky. Be the one who calls for help, offers assistance, or checks on someone in distress. By consciously choosing action, you inspire others around you to follow, breaking the powerful psychological stalemate. Studies show that if just one person decisively intervenes, the bystander effect rapidly collapses. Seeing someone else help suddenly makes observers confident enough to act themselves, transforming passive bystanders into engaged helpers. Your singular decision to step forward can dramatically shift the entire group's response, potentially saving lives or preventing tragedies. Ultimately, the bystander effect highlights a critical truth about human psychology. Relying on others in moments of uncertainty can tragically lead to collective inaction. Understanding this psychological phenomenon helps you recognize the dangerous power of hesitation and responsibility diffusion, motivating you to deliberately choose compassion, courage, and decisive action when witnessing distress. Next time you find yourself in a situation where someone clearly needs help, remember the bystander effect. Remind yourself that hesitation costs precious time, then consciously break the cycle by acting boldly and immediately. Your courageous choice may very well be the difference between tragedy and hope. Placebo sleep effect. Your mind has an incredible ability to shape reality based purely on belief, especially when it comes to sleep. A fascinating psychological phenomenon called the placebo sleep effect demonstrates how simply believing you've had a good night's sleep, even if you haven't, can dramatically boost your performance, energy, and mood. This remarkable mind trick reveals that perception can be just as powerful as reality itself, profoundly influencing your daily life. Here's how the placebo sleep effect works. Your brain relies heavily on expectations. When you believe you've slept well, your mind primes itself for alertness, productivity, and emotional balance. Conversely, believing you've had poor sleep sets you up to feel exhausted, sluggish, and unfocused, regardless of your actual sleep quality. Your subconscious mind, influenced by these expectations, genuinely creates physical and mental outcomes aligned with your beliefs. Imagine waking up after a restless night, convinced you've barely slept. Your immediate reaction is frustration, dread, and fatigue. Throughout the day, your performance suffers dramatically, your attention wanders, your mood deteriorates, and simple tasks seem overwhelmingly difficult. Now, imagine a different scenario. Despite actually sleeping poorly, someone convincingly informs you that you slept deeply and soundly, perhaps showing you manipulated evidence or data from a sleep tracking device. Suddenly, you feel energized, alert, and productive throughout the day, completely unaware that your sleep quality was, in fact, poor. This phenomenon isn't merely hypothetical. It has been demonstrated clearly in psychological studies. Researchers have conducted experiments where participants were deliberately misled about their sleep quality. Participants were given fake reports indicating they had excellent sleep, despite actually sleeping poorly. Remarkably, those participants consistently reported higher energy, better mood, improved cognitive performance, and fewer symptoms of fatigue throughout the day, compared to those accurately informed of their poor sleep. Why does your brain respond so dramatically to beliefs about sleep quality? The answer lies in expectation and perception. Your mind uses internal cues and beliefs to determine how your body should function. If you genuinely believe you've slept well, your brain increases alertness, improves cognitive function, and boosts emotional resilience. This placebo effect operates so convincingly that it can override physical realities, making perception itself incredibly powerful. Businesses and advertisers subtly exploit this phenomenon, marketing products like sleep tracking devices, apps, or supplements promising improved sleep quality. Simply believing these products enhance sleep, even if their actual effectiveness is minimal, can genuinely improve how you feel upon waking. Your subconscious responds powerfully to these positive expectations, delivering tangible benefits purely based on belief. Understanding the placebo sleep effect empowers you to consciously shape your mindset regarding sleep, rather than obsessively worrying about poor sleep quality, which inadvertently reinforces negative expectations. Shift your focus to positive perceptions. Remind yourself that sleep, even if imperfect, can still energize and restore you. By fostering optimistic beliefs about your rest, you naturally enhance your mental and physical responses, significantly improving daily performance and emotional well-being. Practically, this means cultivating routines or rituals that reinforce positive sleep perceptions. Simple actions like using relaxing music, positive affirmations, or guided meditations before bed set expectations for restful sleep, dramatically improving how you feel upon waking, regardless of actual sleep quality. Ultimately, the placebo sleep effect illustrates an extraordinary truth about human psychology. Your mind profoundly influences your reality through belief alone. Recognizing this phenomenon helps you harness its power positively, enhancing your daily life dramatically. Instead of helplessly enduring poor sleep, you actively shape perceptions to transform rest into a powerful source of energy, productivity, and well-being. By consciously embracing the placebo sleep effect, you tap into your brain's astonishing ability to turn perception into reality. Your beliefs about sleep aren't merely illusions. They're powerful tools capable of fundamentally improving your life, one restful night at a time. Semantic satiation. Your brain can suddenly turn the familiar into something bizarre and meaningless simply through repetition. This strange psychological phenomenon, known as semantic satiation, occurs when you repeatedly say or think about a word until it loses its meaning and feels completely alien. Suddenly, a word you've known your entire life can seem utterly absurd, disconnected, and foreign, almost as if you're encountering it for the first time. Semantic satiation happens because your mind processes language in specific ways. When you first hear or use a word, your brain effortlessly associates it with familiar meanings, concepts, and images. But repeating the word excessively disrupts this effortless association. Your neurons, overexposed to the repeated stimulus, temporarily fatigue, causing your brain to momentarily disconnect the word from its meaning. This unusual mental state leaves you perceiving the familiar word as oddly unfamiliar, even surreal. Imagine you're writing an essay and you repeatedly type or say the word tree. Initially, the meaning feels obvious. Your mind easily conjures clear images of leaves, branches, and bark. But as you keep repeating tree, 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 something bizarre occurs. Suddenly, the word seems strange, meaningless, and disconnected from any real object. You begin questioning its spelling, its sound, and its very existence as a word. In this brief, unsettling moment, your brain experiences semantic satiation, transforming something mundane and familiar into something bafflingly unfamiliar. This phenomenon isn't merely linguistic curiosity. It reveals fascinating insights about your brain's workings. Semantic satiation demonstrates how fragile language comprehension can be when pushed to extremes. Your brain relies on patterns and associations, quickly tiring when repeatedly forced to process identical stimuli without variation. The breakdown in meaning highlights just how effortlessly and automatically you typically associate words with their concepts until repetition disrupts this effortless mental shortcut. Advertisers and marketers are cautious about semantic satiation because excessive repetition can diminish the impact of key slogans or brand names. A phrase repeated too frequently in advertising can quickly lose meaning, becoming background noise instead of memorable branding. Similarly, repeating a slogan excessively during a speech or presentation risks creating confusion or disengagement as the audience experiences semantic satiation firsthand. Semantic satiation also offers practical psychological benefits. Therapists and researchers occasionally use this phenomenon intentionally, encouraging individuals to repeatedly repeat emotionally charged words. Through repeated exposure, these words temporarily lose their power, reducing emotional intensity or distress. Over time, semantic satiation can diminish anxiety, fear, or obsessive reactions towards specific words or concepts, subtly reshaping emotional responses through cognitive fatigue. Understanding semantic satiation allows you to approach language and communication more thoughtfully. When writing or speaking, intentionally vary your vocabulary to avoid unintentionally triggering this psychological effect. Similarly, strategically using repetition when desired can deliberately create emphasis, irony, or humor, intentionally causing brief disruptions in listeners' comprehension for rhetorical effect. More broadly, semantic satiation reminds you how your brain constructs meaning from the world around you. It highlights the delicate balance between familiarity, and novelty that keeps your mental associations fresh, engaged, and meaningful. By recognizing this intriguing psychological phenomenon, you gain deeper appreciation for how effortlessly and yet delicately your brain links words, concepts, and perceptions. Next time a familiar word suddenly feels alien after repetition, smile knowingly. Your brain is momentarily experiencing semantic satiation, an intriguing reminder of the subtle complexities beneath your everyday thoughts and perceptions. Rather than unsettling you, let this moment spark fascination, curiosity, and deeper appreciation for the intricate, fragile connections that underpin your understanding of language and reality itself. Authority bias. From childhood, your brain is trained to respect and trust authority figures, teachers, parents, doctors, or anyone else perceived as holding knowledge and power. This trust becomes so deeply ingrained that it can subtly yet powerfully influence your decisions, judgments, and even your perceptions of reality. This psychological phenomenon, known as authority bias, describes your tendency to automatically believe, trust, and follow the opinions or instructions of someone viewed as an authority, even when logic or personal instincts suggest otherwise. Authority bias shapes your thinking and behavior constantly, often without your conscious awareness. Your brain naturally seeks shortcuts to simplify complex decisions and judgments. Relying on authority figures' expertise and advice often provides the easiest, quickest way to navigate uncertainty. However, this mental shortcut can lead you dangerously astray, causing you to suspend your critical thinking simply because an authority figure suggested something was correct or appropriate. Imagine a scenario at a medical clinic. You're feeling mildly unwell, seeking advice from a doctor who confidently prescribes medication. Without hesitation, you accept the recommendation, unquestioningly taking the prescribed pills, trusting entirely in the doctor's expertise. But what if the prescription was incorrect or unnecessary? Your blind acceptance of the doctor's authority prevented you from questioning the advice, potentially causing unintended harm. This scenario illustrates how powerfully authority bias shapes decisions, overriding personal judgment in favor of authority-driven trust. Authority bias famously appeared in psychologist Stanley Milgram's controversial obedience experiments. Participants, following instructions from an authority figure, a researcher in a white lab coat, delivered increasingly severe electric shocks to another individual, believing they were causing real pain. Despite participants' evident distress, nearly two-thirds continued administering shocks simply because an authoritative experimenter told them to. The participants' own morality and judgment were overridden by the experimenter's authority, dramatically illustrating how vulnerable humans can become when guided by authority figures. Businesses, advertisers, and media frequently exploit authority bias, strategically positioning experts or celebrity endorsements to sell products or influence perceptions. Pharmaceutical companies employ doctors to recommend medications in commercials, leveraging your instinctive trust in medical authority. Advertisements featuring people in lab coats or uniforms subtly persuade you by appealing directly to your subconscious respect for authority, making products seem more reliable, effective, or trustworthy. Understanding authority. Bias empowers you to navigate decisions more consciously and critically, rather than blindly accepting advice or recommendations solely because an authority figure presents them. Pause deliberately and ask questions. Seek multiple perspectives or verify information independently before committing to decisions. This thoughtful skepticism protects you from unintentionally surrendering your autonomy or judgment simply due to subconscious respect for authority. Additionally, recognizing authority bias provides profound insights into societal behavior. History repeatedly demonstrates how entire communities, even nations, have been led into disastrous situations by blindly following authoritative figures without critical questioning. Awareness of authority bias reminds you to maintain personal responsibility, actively questioning directives and demands, even from respected leaders, before uncritically obeying. On a more positive note, authority bias can also be harnessed responsibly and ethically. Leaders, educators, or parents who genuinely act in others' best interests can strategically leverage their authority to inspire trust, guide positive decisions, or encourage beneficial behaviors. However, this ethical responsibility requires transparency, integrity, and accountability to avoid manipulation or exploitation. Authority bias reveals a critical truth about human psychology. Your brain instinctively relies on perceived experts to guide decisions and judgments, but blind obedience to authority figures can dangerously compromise your autonomy, morality, and critical thinking. By consciously recognizing and questioning authority bias, you reclaim personal agency, ensuring decisions are genuinely your own, carefully considered, independently verified, and aligned with authentic values rather than blindly dictated by authority alone. Door-in-the-face technique. Sometimes getting exactly what you want from someone doesn't mean starting small. It means starting boldly, by asking for far more than you actually expect to receive. Surprisingly, when you follow a rejected request with a smaller, more reasonable one, people are far more likely to agree. This fascinating psychological strategy is known as the door-in-the-face technique, and it subtly manipulates human behavior in ways that are both clever and remarkably effective. Here's how it works. You begin by intentionally making an extreme, exaggerated request that you fully anticipate will be turned down immediately, like metaphorically slamming the door in your face. Then you quickly follow up with a smaller, more realistic request, the one you wanted from the start, because your second request feels much less demanding by comparison. It dramatically increases the likelihood of agreement. Subconsciously, the person you're persuading feels obligated to compromise after rejecting your initial extreme proposal. Imagine you're a high school student hoping to attend a party, but you're worried your parents might say no. Instead of directly asking permission for the party, you first approach them with a deliberately outrageous request. Mom, Dad, can I stay out until 3 a.m. every Saturday night this month? Naturally, your parents respond with an immediate firm rejection. But then, appearing to accept defeat graciously, you quickly ask, well, can I at least go to this one party until midnight? Suddenly, your second request seems significantly more reasonable. In contrast, increasing your chances of receiving a positive response. Why does this method work so effectively? It taps into powerful psychological forces like reciprocity and guilt. After rejecting your first exaggerated request, the person you're negotiating with instinctively feels a slight sense of guilt or obligation to compromise. To resolve this uncomfortable feeling, they're eager to accept your second, smaller request. The second request becomes perceived as a fair concession, subtly shifting the dynamic in your favor. Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated the effectiveness of the door-in-the-face technique. In a classic study, experimenters first asked participants if they would commit to volunteering at a juvenile detention center weekly for 2 years, a substantial, burdensome request. When participants predictably declined, researchers immediately followed with a significantly smaller request, supervising a one-time, 2-hour visit to a local zoo. Remarkably, participants who previously rejected the larger request overwhelmingly agreed to the second, smaller request. Their willingness to say yes increased dramatically due to the contrast between the requests. Marketers, fundraisers, and negotiators regularly employ this tactic strategically. Charities frequently solicit large donations first, fully aware they'll likely be rejected. Then, when they ask for a much smaller donation afterward, potential donors feel compelled to give, perceiving it as a minor compromise. Salespeople propose expensive products initially, then strategically introduce more reasonably priced alternatives, making customers feel they're getting a bargain. Understanding the door-in-the-face technique empowers you to recognize and ethically apply this persuasive method. Rather than being manipulated unknowingly, you become consciously aware of how comparisons between requests shape perceptions. This awareness also allows you to guard yourself against subtle manipulations in negotiations, advertising, and interpersonal interactions. When using this technique ethically, it's critical to respect genuine fairness and honesty. The goal isn't trickery or deception, but strategic persuasion, ensuring your initial request isn't completely absurd or offensive, merely exaggerated enough to provide clear contrast. Done correctly, this approach fosters mutual compromise and encourages positive outcomes in various life situations. The door-in-the-face technique reveals a captivating insight into human psychology. People instinctively respond more favorably when given opportunities for compromise. Mastering this persuasive method allows you to navigate social interactions and negotiations skillfully, achieving desired outcomes through understanding, empathy, and strategic communication. Your requests, carefully structured and timed, can become dramatically more persuasive, forever changing how you approach influence and negotiation in everyday life. Sleeper effect. It's strange to realize how misinformation can silently grow stronger over time, quietly embedding itself into your beliefs, even long after you've forgotten its original source. This subtle psychological phenomenon is known as the sleeper effect, and it demonstrates how persuasive messages, initially dismissed or doubted due to their unreliable sources, can gradually become more believable as time passes, slowly reshaping your views without your awareness. The sleeper effect occurs because your brain naturally separates messages from their sources over time. Initially, when you receive information, you critically evaluate its credibility, heavily influenced by the trustworthiness of its source. If the information comes from someone untrustworthy or biased, you instinctively discount or reject it. However, as days or weeks go by, your memory of the source fades, but the message itself lingers subconsciously, gradually integrating into your beliefs. Eventually, the once dismissed message can resurface as seemingly credible and trustworthy information, subtly influencing your thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. Imagine browsing social media and encountering an alarming, provocative statistic about health risks associated with a common food. Initially, you notice the claim comes from a sensationalized, clearly biased source, so you quickly dismiss it as exaggerated misinformation. But weeks later, your memory of the dubious source fades, yet subconsciously, you retain the alarming claim itself. When the topic of this food arises later in conversation, you find yourself confidently repeating that same alarming statistic, completely forgetting it originated from an unreliable source. Without realizing it, you've fallen victim to the sleeper effect, allowing misinformation you initially rejected to quietly shape your beliefs. Advertisers, politicians, and media organizations frequently exploit this psychological phenomenon strategically. They understand that even messages initially viewed skeptically due to biased sources or controversial platforms can eventually become widely accepted beliefs. For instance, political campaigns often distribute negative claims or misinformation about opponents through questionable sources. Initially, voters dismiss or doubt the claims, but over weeks or months, voters forget the original unreliable source, and the misinformation gradually becomes integrated into their beliefs, influencing opinions subtly yet powerfully. Researchers studying the sleeper effect have demonstrated its profound impact clearly. In psychological experiments, participants initially rejected messages presented by obviously biased or unreliable sources. However, when researchers evaluated participants' attitudes weeks later, participants consistently demonstrated increased agreement and acceptance of previously rejected information. This shift occurred specifically because participants forgot the unreliable sources, allowing messages themselves to linger, influencing attitudes subconsciously. Understanding the sleeper effect helps protect you against subtle manipulation. Recognizing that misinformation can grow more persuasive over time, even after initially dismissing it, encourages you to critically question and verify important claims independently, especially if their sources were originally dubious or biased. Being mindful of how memory fades, yet messages remain, helps you resist unintentionally internalizing inaccurate or misleading information. Additionally, consciously revisiting and reinforcing your memory of sources when receiving new information helps prevent the sleeper effect from distorting your beliefs. When encountering provocative or impactful claims, pause deliberately to remind yourself explicitly about their reliability or lack thereof. Reinforcing your memory of original sources helps maintain your critical evaluation of messages, preventing misinformation from subtly reshaping your perspectives later. Ultimately, the sleeper effect highlights a critical truth about human psychology. Your mind is surprisingly vulnerable to subtle manipulations over time. Misinformation dismissed initially due to unreliable sources can quietly gain power, silently influencing your attitudes, beliefs, and decisions long after its origins fade from memory. Becoming consciously aware of this psychological phenomenon empowers you to approach information thoughtfully, critically, and deliberately, ensuring your beliefs remain accurate reflections of reality rather than subtle products of forgotten misinformation. By mastering your understanding of the sleeper effect, you guard against hidden manipulations, confidently shaping your beliefs based solely on truth, accuracy, and conscious awareness, rather than subtly deceptive influences that grow stronger over time. Gambler's Fallacy. Humans instinctively seek patterns, even when none truly exist. One of the most intriguing psychological illusions your mind creates is called the gambler's fallacy. It's the false belief that if something happens more frequently than usual during a specific period, it's less likely to occur again soon, or vice versa. In simpler terms, your brain mistakenly assumes past random events influence future outcomes, creating imaginary patterns and expectations where none genuinely exist. Imagine you're flipping a fair coin, which has exactly a 50-50 chance of landing heads or tails each time. Suppose the coin lands heads 5 times in a row. Intuitively, your brain insists the next flip must land tails, believing it's somehow due. Rationally, you know each coin flip is entirely independent. Past flips have no effect on future outcomes, yet the longer a sequence repeats itself, the stronger your brain feels compelled to anticipate change. This internal conflict, driven by an instinctive yet irrational expectation, vividly demonstrates the gambler's fallacy in action. Why does your brain fall so easily for this misconception? It's because your mind constantly seeks to establish patterns and predictability. Randomness feels unsettling. Your brain naturally craves order, logic, and structure. When encountering seemingly improbable sequences, like repeatedly flipping heads on a coin, your mind desperately seeks explanations or justifications, even inventing false expectations about future outcomes. You unconsciously create fictional balance, mistakenly assuming random events must even out over time. The gambler's fallacy frequently appears in gambling, hence its name. Imagine a roulette table where the ball lands on black repeatedly. Gamblers quickly begin betting heavily on red, convinced it's overdue. Casinos knowingly exploit this psychological illusion, profiting immensely from gamblers believing past spins predict future outcomes. Statistically, every spin remains independent, yet gamblers persistently believe patterns must eventually balance, fueling addictive cycles of loss and disappointment. This psychological bias extends far beyond gambling, subtly influencing everyday decisions and perceptions. Investors fall prey to the gambler's fallacy by incorrectly assuming stocks declining continuously must inevitably rebound soon, or vice versa. People mistakenly believe lottery numbers frequently drawn previously become less likely in future drawings, despite mathematical independence. Even decisions unrelated to chance can be influenced, like assuming bad luck must inevitably reverse after repeated misfortunes, creating false hope or unrealistic expectations. Recognizing the gambler's fallacy helps protect you from irrational, costly decisions rooted in imagined patterns or expectations. Simply understanding that random events remain genuinely independent, unaffected by past outcomes, allows you to approach uncertainty with rational clarity rather than emotional misconception. Whenever you notice your brain attempting to predict future outcomes based solely on recent events, pause deliberately and remind yourself explicitly about statistical independence. Additionally, conscious awareness helps you navigate emotional responses rooted in the gambler's fallacy, rather than becoming irrationally frustrated, fearful, or hopeful after improbable sequences occur. You calmly accept randomness for precisely what it is, unpredictable and unaffected by past occurrences. Embracing genuine unpredictability reduces unnecessary anxiety, stress, or false expectations caused by imaginary patterns. Ultimately, the gambler's fallacy reveals a powerful truth about human psychology. Your brain instinctively craves order, logic, and predictability, even in circumstances fundamentally unpredictable and random. Understanding this cognitive bias empowers you to approach uncertainty rationally, consciously guarding against emotional or irrational decisions rooted in false expectations. Rather than helplessly surrendering to illusions of patterns or balance, you deliberately remind yourself about genuine statistical independence, making decisions grounded in reality rather than subconscious misconceptions. By mastering awareness of the gambler's fallacy, you reclaim rational control over decisions, perspectives, and reactions toward randomness. Your mind stops imagining fictional patterns where none exist, granting genuine clarity, emotional balance, and decisiveness, even amidst life's most uncertain, unpredictable circumstances. Curse of knowledge. There's a fascinating psychological phenomenon quietly influencing your conversations, relationships, and daily interactions. Something so subtle yet incredibly powerful called the curse of knowledge. This cognitive bias occurs when you're so familiar with a topic or idea that you struggle to explain or understand it from the perspective of someone less informed. Essentially, once you learn something, it's almost impossible to imagine what it feels like not to know it. Your own expertise subtly blinds you, causing frustration, confusion, and misunderstandings in communication. Consider a common scenario. Imagine you're teaching someone how to perform a task you've mastered effortlessly, perhaps driving a car, playing an instrument, or using a particular software program. You explain the steps clearly, at least that's how it feels to you, yet the person you're instructing seems hopelessly confused. No matter how clearly you believe you're explaining, your instructions aren't connecting. Frustration grows, both yours and theirs, as your pupil struggles to grasp concepts you find obviously simple. This confusion isn't due to incompetence. It's directly caused by the curse of knowledge. Why does this happen? Your brain constantly forms mental shortcuts, streamlining complex process into simple, automatic actions. As you become increasingly skilled at something, your brain efficiently compresses that expertise into subconscious routines, bypassing conscious awareness. Over time, the complexity, challenges, and confusion experienced initially fade from memory. Your mind effortlessly assumes everyone else shares your current knowledge level, leaving you struggling to empathize with beginners' confusion or ignorance. Researchers famously illustrated the curse of knowledge through a simple experiment. Participants tapped out familiar songs using only their fingers, expecting listeners to accurately guess each melody. Tappers predicted listeners would easily recognize familiar tunes, yet listeners rarely identified songs correctly. The tappers were shocked. The tunes seemed incredibly obvious in their minds. Their intimate familiarity with the melody blinded them to how vague and ambiguous tapping alone appeared to listeners. This vividly demonstrates how strongly the curse of knowledge warps your perceptions, expectations, and communication. Businesses frequently fall victim to this cognitive bias. Engineers designing products often unintentionally overlook usability issues because they're too familiar with their creations. Instructions or manuals omit crucial steps because creators can't recall confusion experienced initially. Leaders communicating visions or strategies assume their teams share the same knowledge context, causing misunderstandings, frustration, and disengagement. Understanding the curse of knowledge helps you communicate more effectively and empathetically. Before explaining concepts, consciously remind yourself how it felt initially, recalling confusion, uncertainty, and struggles from when you first learned. Deliberately simplify explanations, avoiding jargon or assumptions about existing knowledge. Ask clarifying questions, actively checking for understanding rather than assuming clarity. Additionally, awareness fosters patience and compassion when others struggle with concepts familiar to you. Recognize confusion or ignorance isn't due to incompetence. It's caused by natural cognitive barriers inherent within the curse of knowledge. Offering patience, empathy, and clear explanations reduces frustration dramatically, improving relationships, teaching effectiveness, and mutual understanding. Practically, recognizing this cognitive bias helps businesses and organizations dramatically improve communication, training, and product development. Rather than assuming shared understanding, companies consciously simplify explanations, instructions, and messages, testing communication clarity explicitly from beginner perspectives. This dramatically reduces confusion, enhances engagement, and ensures information is genuinely accessible, regardless of existing knowledge levels. Ultimately, the curse of knowledge reveals a profound truth about human cognition. Your expertise, ironically, can become your greatest communication obstacle. Awareness transforms this obstacle into an opportunity for deeper empathy, clearer communication, and improved relationships, rather than inadvertently causing confusion or frustration through assumptions. You consciously navigate interactions thoughtfully, compassionately, and effectively, sharing your expertise in ways genuinely understandable, accessible, and helpful. Recognizing the curse of knowledge empowers you to communicate thoughtfully, empathize deeply, and share your knowledge meaningfully, transforming frustration into understanding, confusion into clarity, and subtle cognitive blind spots into powerful opportunities for genuine human connection. Choice overload. Your mind constantly craves freedom and variety, but what happens when you're presented with too many options? Ironically, instead of feeling empowered, you become paralyzed, anxious, and even unhappy. This intriguing psychological phenomenon is known as choice overload. It reveals that while having options is desirable, too many choices can overwhelm your mind, decreasing your ability to make confident, satisfying decisions. Picture yourself in a grocery store aisle, staring at an entire shelf filled with countless varieties of jam. There are dozens of flavors, brands, and price points, each option competing for your attention. Initially, you're excited by the possibilities. However, The longer you stand there, the more your excitement fades into uncertainty. The options blur together, each choice appearing increasingly complicated. Eventually, feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, you leave empty-handed, choosing nothing at all. This scenario illustrates choice overload perfectly. While your mind values having freedom to choose, excessive options overwhelm your brain's decision-making abilities. Too many possibilities create cognitive confusion, anxiety, and decision fatigue. Instead of empowering you, numerous choices trigger fear of making the wrong decision, leading to indecision or dissatisfaction, even after eventually choosing. Research consistently demonstrates choice overload's powerful effects. In a famous experiment, psychologists offered shoppers either 24 or 6 jam varieties at a tasting booth. Interestingly, although the larger display initially attracted more interest, customers presented with fewer options were dramatically more likely to actually make a purchase. The abundance of choices in the larger display paralyzed shoppers, preventing confident decisions. Conversely, limited options simplified choices, increasing purchasing confidence and satisfaction significantly. Why does your brain struggle with too many choices? Decision-making consumes significant cognitive energy. Each additional choice multiplies your brain's analytical load, comparing options, anticipating outcomes, and weighing risks. Excessive possibilities quickly exhaust cognitive resources, generating anxiety, stress, and decision fatigue. Your mind fears regret, worrying you'll select incorrectly, causing indecision and dissatisfaction. Businesses unknowingly trigger choice overload frequently. Restaurants presenting excessively detailed menus leave diners frustrated and indecisive. Streaming platforms with overwhelming movie libraries leave viewers endlessly scrolling without satisfaction. Retailers offering too many product variations accidentally discourage purchases rather than encouraging them. Understanding choice overload helps you approach decisions strategically. Limiting options intentionally simplifies decisions, reducing cognitive overload dramatically. Rather than evaluating countless possibilities, intentionally narrow choices to 3 or 4 top contenders. Clearly define priorities, setting decision-making criteria beforehand to clarify choices quickly and confidently. When presenting choices to others, whether customers, friends, or colleagues, strategically limit options provided. Rather than overwhelming with countless possibilities, carefully curate 3 or 4 appealing choices. Simplified presentations dramatically increase decision-making confidence, satisfaction, and engagement. Additionally, consciously accept limitations rather than resisting them. Recognize limitations aren't restrictive, they're genuinely empowering, protecting your cognitive resources, increasing satisfaction, and reducing anxiety significantly. Embracing limited choices helps you make decisions confidently, efficiently, and happily, rather than anxiously or regretfully. Ultimately, choice overload reveals a profound truth about human psychology. Unlimited options paradoxically paralyze rather than empower your mind. Recognizing this psychological phenomenon transforms how you approach decisions, communicate choices, and structure life strategically. Rather than helplessly drowning in overwhelming possibilities, you consciously simplify, clarify, and limit choices intentionally, maximizing satisfaction, confidence, and decisiveness dramatically. Your mind seeks clarity over confusion, simplicity over complexity. Mastering choice overload means consciously embracing intentional limitations, dramatically reducing anxiety, indecision, and dissatisfaction. Whether shopping, working, or living life itself, thoughtfully limiting choices frees cognitive resources, empowers confident decisions, and fosters genuine happiness. Rather than feeling paralyzed by endless possibilities, recognize your mind's limitations. Consciously simplify choices, curating options strategically, deliberately, and thoughtfully. Your brain, freed from overwhelming indecision, confidently chooses and genuinely thrives. Effort justification. Your brain holds a fascinating secret. The harder you work for something, the more value and meaning you assign to it, regardless of its actual worth. This intriguing psychological phenomenon, known as effort justification, reveals how your mind unconsciously convinces itself that something requiring significant effort, struggle, or sacrifice must inherently be valuable, meaningful, or worthwhile. In short, your effort doesn't just reflect value, it actively creates it. Imagine you've spent months preparing for a difficult, exhausting marathon, training rigorously, enduring early mornings, sore muscles, and countless sacrifices. On the race day itself, the weather is miserable, the course feels brutally difficult, and every mile feels torturous. Rationally, you might question why you're voluntarily putting yourself through such discomfort. Yet, when you finally cross the finish line, exhausted, aching, and emotionally drained, your mind experiences powerful feelings of accomplishment, pride, and deep personal meaning. You firmly believe the experience was incredibly valuable, not necessarily due to any objective reward, but primarily because of the immense effort invested. Why does your brain instinctively assign higher value to things requiring effort or sacrifice? It's because humans experience cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable tension resulting from conflicting thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. When you've voluntarily invested significant effort, discomfort, or sacrifice into something, your brain experiences cognitive dissonance if outcomes or rewards feel insufficient. To resolve this uncomfortable tension, your mind unconsciously adjusts its perception of value, convincing itself the goal or outcome genuinely justified all the sacrifices and struggles endured. Researchers have demonstrated effort justification repeatedly through intriguing psychological studies. In a famous experiment, participants underwent an embarrassing initiation ritual to join a discussion group. Interestingly, individuals subjected to more severe initiations rated the boring group discussions afterward as significantly more enjoyable and valuable compared to participants with easier initiations. Their minds justified the embarrassment and discomfort experience, assigning artificially inflated value to otherwise mundane activities. Businesses subtly leverage effort justification by intentionally increasing perceived effort or scarcity, creating artificial barriers to enhance perceived value. Exclusive clubs requiring elaborate application processes or membership fees intentionally trigger effort justification, leading members to perceive experiences as inherently more meaningful and prestigious due to significant investments of time, money, or discomfort. Understanding effort. Justification offers profound insights into your psychology and behavior. Recognizing how effort subconsciously inflates perceived value helps you evaluate decisions more rationally and objectively. When investing significant effort, pause deliberately. Ask yourself explicitly whether outcomes genuinely merit sacrifices, or if your brain unconsciously inflates their value simply to justify efforts already invested. Additionally, consciously harness effort justification strategically in life. When seeking deeper satisfaction or personal fulfillment, intentionally engage in activities requiring meaningful effort or sacrifice. Embrace difficult challenges, voluntary discomfort, or rigorous pursuits deliberately, knowing your mind instinctively assigns heightened value and meaning afterward, deepening satisfaction dramatically. Yet, awareness also guards against inadvertently wasting effort unnecessarily. Remain mindful not every sacrifice or discomfort genuinely enhances value or meaning proportionately. Critically evaluate whether perceived value genuinely matches objective reality, or if your mind exaggerates worth simply to justify previous sacrifices. Ultimately, effort justification highlights a profound psychological truth. Value isn't merely objective, it's powerfully subjective, actively shaped by your own perceptions, beliefs, and cognitive biases. Effort, sacrifice, and struggle don't just reflect inherent worth. They actively create it within your mind. By consciously recognizing effort justification, you masterfully shape perceptions strategically. Rather than helplessly succumbing to unconscious biases, you deliberately harness effort to create deeper satisfaction, meaning, and fulfillment. Your mind transforms struggles and sacrifices into profound sources of value, accomplishment, and genuine joy. Effort justification empowers you to approach challenges deliberately, understanding precisely how and why your brain instinctively assigns heightened value. Embrace effort confidently, consciously, and intentionally. Allow struggles to amplify satisfaction and meaning deeply, forever shifting your perspective toward effort, sacrifice, and genuine human fulfillment. Belief, perseverance. Your mind has a mysterious power. It can stubbornly hold on to beliefs even when faced with overwhelming evidence disproving them. This intriguing psychological phenomenon is known as belief perseverance, and it explains why changing someone's opinion or perspective can feel nearly impossible, even in the face of undeniable proof. It reveals the unsettling truth that your mind instinctively clings to familiar beliefs, protecting your sense of identity and certainty, even when those beliefs have clearly been debunked. Consider this scenario. You've spent years believing that a particular diet or nutritional approach dramatically improves your health. You've read countless articles, testimonials, and anecdotes supporting your belief. But one day, credible scientific studies emerge clearly demonstrating your beloved diet has little or no benefit and may even cause harm. Rationally, this should immediately shift your opinion. Yet surprisingly, your mind resists accepting this new evidence, instinctively rejecting it. You desperately search for loopholes, criticisms, or explanations discrediting these studies, unwilling to accept reality. This powerful psychological resistance vividly demonstrates belief perseverance in action. Belief perseverance occurs because your brain deeply identifies with familiar beliefs, associating them directly with your identity, self-worth, and emotional stability. When new evidence contradicts those beliefs, your mind experiences cognitive dissonance, a painful internal tension caused by conflicting thoughts. Rather than accepting uncomfortable truths, your brain instinctively seeks ways to resolve this tension by dismissing, discrediting, or ignoring contrary evidence, protecting cherished beliefs even when they've clearly been disproven. Researchers have demonstrated belief perseverance repeatedly through compelling experiments. In one influential study, participants received fabricated feedback about their supposed success or failure, identifying suicide notes as real or fake. After researchers revealed feedback was entirely false, participants still stubbornly believed they possessed special skills identifying suicide notes. Despite clear evidence otherwise, their minds clung desperately to initial beliefs formed. Even when explicitly informed, those beliefs were completely unfounded. Businesses, politicians, and media strategically exploit belief perseverance frequently. Political campaigns knowingly spread misinformation. Aware, debunked claims still subtly influence voter beliefs afterward. Advertisers continue promoting disproven product claims. Confident consumers subconsciously retain original beliefs regardless of contradictory evidence. Recognizing belief perseverance empowers you to resist subtle manipulations, critically evaluating claims independently before internalizing them. Understanding belief perseverance offers powerful insights into your psychology. Awareness allows you to consciously question beliefs critically, actively evaluating contrary evidence rather than instinctively dismissing it. When confronted with uncomfortable truths, challenging cherished beliefs, pause deliberately, actively seek, and thoughtfully consider contradictory information. Rather than resisting, accept cognitive dissonance calmly, allowing internal tension to reshape beliefs accurately. Additionally, awareness fosters empathy and patience when engaging others holding stubbornly resistant beliefs. Recognize their resistance isn't deliberate ignorance. It results directly from natural psychological defenses triggered by belief perseverance. Compassionately offer evidence repeatedly, patiently, and gently. Understanding their subconscious instinctively protects beliefs tied intimately to identity, practically consciously mitigating belief. Perseverance dramatically improves decision-making, relationships, and personal growth. Remain deliberately open-minded, continuously challenging personal beliefs critically rather than instinctively dismissing contrary information. Embrace cognitive dissonance intentionally, consciously reshaping beliefs to align accurately with reality rather than subconscious biases. Ultimately, belief perseverance reveals a profound truth about human psychology. Your mind instinctively protects cherished beliefs, even at the expense of truth and accuracy. Recognizing this cognitive bias transforms stubborn resistance into conscious openness, enabling deliberate reshaping of beliefs thoughtfully, critically, and intentionally. Rather than helplessly clinging subconsciously to disproven beliefs, consciously embrace reality, deliberately questioning assumptions courageously. Allow cognitive dissonance to reshape perspectives accurately, thoughtfully, and authentically, forever changing how your mind navigates uncertainty, evidence, and truth itself. By mastering awareness of belief perseverance, you reclaim personal autonomy, rationality, and genuine growth, ensuring beliefs continuously evolve consciously rather than remaining stubbornly, dangerously stagnant. Your mind, consciously reshaped by thoughtful openness, thrives, transforming stubborn resistance into powerful personal evolution. Reverse psychology. There's a subtle and strangely effective way to persuade someone to do exactly what you want. Simply tell them to do the opposite. This intriguing psychological trick, known as reverse psychology, leverages the human instinct to rebel against instructions or commands, subtly guiding people to choose the very action they're told to avoid. It's a fascinating phenomenon, highlighting how paradoxically our minds respond to perceived restrictions, limitations, or commands. Imagine a scenario. You're dealing with a child who refuses to eat vegetables, stubbornly rejecting even small tastes. Directly encouraging, begging, or commanding the child to eat vegetables typically proves futile. Frustrated, you suddenly shift tactics, casually remarking, "Actually, those carrots might be too delicious. Maybe you shouldn't eat them after all." To your surprise, moments later, the child defiantly grabs carrots, eagerly munching them while smiling mischievously. You've successfully employed reverse psychology, subtly guiding the child to choose precisely what you wanted, all by strategically recommending against it. Why does this psychological trick work so effectively? Humans instinctively crave freedom, autonomy, and independence. Any perceived threats or limitations to this freedom trigger immediate rebellion, resistance, and defiance. When instructed explicitly against a particular action, your brain automatically focuses intensely on that prohibited choice, feeling compelled to reclaim threatened autonomy by choosing precisely what's forbidden. Businesses cleverly leverage reverse psychology frequently. Companies deliberately present products as exclusive, limited, or restricted, intentionally activating your rebellious instinct, increasing desire dramatically. Advertisers subtly suggest products might be unsuitable or excessively luxurious. Knowing consumers instinctively reject limitations by choosing restricted products defiantly. Even warnings labeling movies or music forbidden, controversial, or explicit subtly activate reverse psychology, dramatically increasing audience curiosity, desire, and interest. Researchers have demonstrated reverse psychology's power clearly through psychological studies. In experiments, participants consistently exhibit greater desire, interest, and attraction toward forbidden or restricted options compared explicitly to encouraged or permitted choices. Your brain instinctively rebels against perceived limitations or commands, dramatically reshaping preferences toward prohibited choices. Understanding reverse psychology offers profound insights into persuasion, communication, and human motivation. Rather than stubbornly commanding or instructing explicitly, consciously employ subtlety, paradox, and strategic ambiguity, suggesting or implying rather than commanding directly, intentionally presenting desired actions as slightly restricted, forbidden, or exclusive, subtly activates rebellious instincts, dramatically increasing engagement, desire, and voluntary compliance. Additionally, awareness protects against subtle manipulations, leveraging reverse psychology strategically. Recognize when marketers, advertisers, or individuals intentionally provoke rebellious instincts through reverse commands or restrictions. Deliberately pause and critically evaluate motivations, questioning subtle recommendations against specific actions rather than instinctively rebelling automatically. Practically, ethically employing reverse psychology requires subtlety, tact, and emotional intelligence. Overusing this psychological tactic risks damaging trust or credibility, leading individuals to mistrust motivations or intentions. Reserve reverse psychology strategically for specific situations genuinely requiring persuasion, subtly rather than explicitly. Ultimately, reverse psychology highlights a profound psychological truth. Your mind instinctively rebels against perceived threats to autonomy, freedom, or independence. Explicit commands or prohibitions paradoxically trigger intense desire toward precisely forbidden choices. Recognizing this psychological phenomenon dramatically reshapes communication strategies, persuasion techniques, and interpersonal interactions. Rather than helplessly commanding explicitly, consciously employ strategic subtlety, paradox, and ambiguity, guiding choices indirectly yet effectively. Allow rebellious instincts to subtly guide individuals toward genuinely desired outcomes, voluntarily, authentically, and willingly. Mastering reverse psychology transforms persuasion dramatically, leveraging paradox strategically rather than helplessly succumbing unconsciously. Your communication becomes subtly yet powerfully effective, guiding decisions authentically, consciously, and ethically, forever reshaping perspectives on persuasion, motivation, and human nature itself. De-individuation. Hidden deep within the crowd, your mind can transform dramatically, causing you to behave in ways you'd never dream of on your own. This fascinating yet unsettling psychological phenomenon is known as de-individuation. It describes the profound loss of self-awareness and personal identity you experience when immersed in large groups, leading to behaviors often irrational, impulsive, or even dangerous. In the anonymity provided by a crowd, social restraints loosen, emotions intensify, and actions once unthinkable become shockingly possible. Imagine you're attending an electrifying concert or a massive sporting event, surrounded by thousands of people shouting, dancing, and chanting passionately. Something peculiar occurs within your mind. Gradually, your sense of individuality fades away. Personal identity feels diminished. You're no longer you, the distinct individual, but rather part of a powerful collective force. Swept up in communal energy, you begin acting impulsively, joining spontaneous chants, dances, or behaviors previously unimaginable alone. Rationally, later reflection might puzzle you. Why did I behave so differently? The answer lies within de-individuation, subtly yet powerfully transforming your psychological state. De-individuation occurs because your sense of personal responsibility, accountability, and self-consciousness diminishes dramatically within crowds. Your brain instinctively perceives anonymity, feeling hidden safely within group identities. This anonymity reduces fear of judgment, consequences, or social restraints, freeing suppressed impulses, emotions, or behaviors typically constrained by social expectations. Actions once irrational or taboo suddenly feel possible, acceptable, or even desirable, driven powerfully by collective energy rather than individual judgment. Researchers have clearly demonstrated de-individuation's profound psychological effects through intriguing experiments. In a classic study, participants wore anonymous hoods and robes, hiding their identities completely. Strikingly, anonymous participants administered harsher punishments toward others compared explicitly to identifiable individuals, demonstrating clearly how anonymity profoundly influences moral judgment, behavior, and self-restraint dramatically. De-individuation frequently shapes real-world events tragically. Riots, violent demonstrations, or mob behaviors often emerge directly from profound psychological transformations caused by anonymity within crowds. Normally peaceful, rational individuals find themselves behaving aggressively, destructively, or violently. Later shocked by their actions once anonymity fades, identities return, and personal accountability resumes. Businesses, politicians, and media strategically exploit de-individuation frequently. Social media anonymity subtly encourages users toward hateful, aggressive, or abusive behaviors unimaginable face-to-face. Online platforms deliberately foster anonymous environments intentionally. Aware anonymity reduces accountability dramatically, increasing impulsivity, hostility, and intensity significantly. Understanding de-individuation empowers you profoundly. Consciously recognizing anonymity's powerful psychological effects allows deliberate resistance against irrational impulses, emotions, or behaviors provoked subconsciously within crowds. Deliberately maintaining self-awareness, personal identity, and individual responsibility dramatically reduces vulnerability toward collective emotional contagion, irrational impulses, or destructive behaviors. Practically, awareness provides crucial protection during potentially dangerous crowd situations. When sensing impulsive behaviors emerging, pausing deliberately, actively reflecting upon personal identity explicitly, reminding yourself consciously about individual responsibility, accountability, and self-restraint dramatically mitigates de-individuation's powerful psychological influence. Maintaining rationality, judgment, and ethical behavior deliberately despite collective pressures otherwise. Additionally, understanding de-individuation dramatically enhances empathy, compassion, and understanding toward others behaving irrationally within crowds. Recognize their actions aren't malicious. They're driven directly by profound psychological transformations caused subconsciously by anonymity itself. Compassionately helping others regain individual identity, responsibility, and rational self-awareness significantly reduces irrational behaviors collectively. Ultimately, de-individuation reveals profound psychological truths about human behavior. Your mind instinctively transforms dramatically within crowds, personal identity diminishing, accountability fading, and impulsivity increasing significantly. Understanding this phenomenon empowers deliberate resistance against irrational, emotional contagion, violence, or aggression subconsciously provoked anonymously. Rather than helplessly surrendering unconsciously within crowds, consciously maintain personal identity, responsibility, and accountability deliberately. Allow rationality, judgment, and ethical self-restraint, guiding behaviors authentically, intentionally, and consciously, forever reshaping perspectives on crowds, anonymity, and genuine human behavior itself. By mastering awareness of de-individuation, you reclaim personal autonomy dramatically, confidently navigating collective environments safely, rationally, and ethically, transforming psychological vulnerabilities into profound personal strengths, deliberately, consciously, and strategically. Social proof. There's an invisible force quietly shaping your daily decisions, guiding everything from your purchases and behaviors to your beliefs and opinions, often without your conscious awareness. This powerful psychological phenomenon is known as social proof. It reveals how your mind instinctively relies on observing others to determine correct or appropriate behaviors, choices, or judgments. Essentially, your brain subtly assumes that if many people behave or believe a certain way, that choice must be correct, desirable, or safe, causing you to follow the crowd subconsciously. Picture yourself walking down an unfamiliar street, searching for a restaurant. Two restaurants appear before you, one completely empty, the other bustling with customers. Instinctively, your brain assumes the crowded restaurant must offer superior food or atmosphere. Otherwise, why would everyone choose it? Without thinking, you confidently walk toward the crowded establishment, fully convinced you've made the logical choice. This scenario illustrates social proof powerfully, subtly influencing your decision based entirely on observing others' behaviors rather than independent evaluation. Why does your brain instinctively follow the crowd? Humans evolved as deeply social creatures, relying profoundly upon communities for survival, safety, and prosperity. Your mind naturally trusts collective wisdom, assuming groups accurately judge situations or dangers better collectively rather than individually. Following the crowd instinctively reduces cognitive burdens dramatically, allowing your brain to confidently navigate uncertainty simply by observing collective behaviors rather than exhaustively analyzing independently. Businesses deliberately exploit social proof constantly, leveraging powerful psychological instincts subtly yet effectively. Restaurants strategically seat customers visibly near windows, creating illusions of popularity to attract passers-by. Online platforms prominently display likes, followers, or testimonials intentionally, aware your brain instinctively trusts collective judgments subconsciously, dramatically increasing trust, confidence, and engagement significantly. Researchers vividly demonstrated social proof's profound psychological power repeatedly through intriguing studies. In one famous experiment, participants entering an elevator subtly observed researchers deliberately facing backward rather than forward. Remarkably, participants consistently followed suit, obediently turning backward themselves, even though logically irrational or uncomfortable. Their minds instinctively trusted collective behaviors rather than independent rational judgments, demonstrating social proof's powerful influence dramatically. Yet, social proof possesses significant risks. Collective behaviors frequently aren't rational, accurate, or ethical. History repeatedly reveals dangerous group behaviors, financial bubbles, violent mobs, or widespread misinformation emerging directly from individuals blindly trusting crowds instinctively rather than independently evaluating situations rationally. Understanding social proof dramatically empowers deliberate resistance against irrational collective behaviors, consciously reclaiming independent judgment, evaluation, and decision-making critically, rather than helplessly following crowds subconsciously. Practically, consciously leveraging social proof dramatically enhances communication, persuasion, and influence strategically, rather than explicitly commanding or persuading directly. subtly highlight collective behaviors, judgments, or testimonials strategically, allowing individuals' instincts towards social proof naturally guiding decisions authentically, voluntarily, and confidently. Additionally, awareness guards powerfully against unethical manipulations, subtly exploiting social proof strategically. When encountering powerful collective behaviors, pause deliberately, consciously questioning motivations explicitly, critically evaluate situations independently rather than instinctively trusting crowds subconsciously, deliberately maintaining rational judgment, clarity, and autonomy confidently. Ultimately, social proof reveals profound psychological truths about human nature. Your brain instinctively trusts collective wisdom deeply, subtly guiding decisions constantly. Understanding this phenomenon dramatically reshapes perspectives toward crowds, influence, and decision-making powerfully, transforming unconscious vulnerability into profound personal empowerment, deliberately, consciously, and strategically, rather than helplessly following crowds subconsciously. Consciously reclaim independent rationality, judgment, and autonomy explicitly. Strategically leverage social proof ethically, subtly guiding behaviors authentically, genuinely, and voluntarily, transforming instinctive vulnerabilities into profound personal strengths, confidently, intentionally, and powerfully. By mastering awareness of social proof, you profoundly reshape decisions deliberately, navigating crowds consciously, critically, and authentically. Your mind, consciously empowered by deliberate understanding, confidently resists irrational collective pressures, reclaiming rationality, judgment, and genuine autonomy forever. Reciprocity Norm. There's a hidden psychological force at play every time someone does something nice for you, often influencing your actions without you even realizing it. This subtle yet powerful phenomenon is known as the reciprocity norm, and it reveals how your mind instinctively feels obligated to return kindness, favors, or gestures, even if you didn't explicitly request them. Essentially, when someone offers something of value, your brain feels compelled to reciprocate, subtly guiding your decisions and behaviors profoundly. Imagine you're visiting a car dealership just to browse, not planning on making a purchase at all. Upon arriving, a salesperson greets you warmly, offering a complimentary coffee and a free gift, a small branded keychain. Although these gestures seem minor, something fascinating happens within your mind. You begin feeling subtly indebted as the salesperson guides you around, demonstrating cars enthusiastically. Your subconscious obligation grows stronger. Without consciously realizing why, you feel increasingly uncomfortable leaving without reciprocating their kindness, perhaps by seriously considering a purchase, scheduling another visit, or providing personal information. This scenario powerfully illustrates the reciprocity norm, subtly influencing your actions simply through small acts of kindness. Why does your brain instinctively feel obligated to return favors or gestures? Humans evolved as deeply social creatures, depending profoundly upon community cooperation for survival, safety, and prosperity. Reciprocity formed a crucial evolutionary instinct, strengthening social bonds, ensuring mutual support, and maintaining community stability. Your brain instinctively recognizes kindness or generosity as beneficial social cooperation, immediately triggering subconscious obligations toward reciprocation to maintain social harmony and relationships. Businesses leverage reciprocity norm frequently, deliberately offering complimentary samples, free consultations, or gifts intentionally, aware your mind instinctively feels obligated subconsciously toward reciprocation, dramatically increasing purchasing likelihood, loyalty, and customer satisfaction significantly. Restaurants provide complimentary appetizers or desserts strategically, subtly activating subconscious obligations toward tipping generously or returning frequently. Online platforms offer free trials deliberately, knowing subconscious reciprocity instincts dramatically increase likelihood toward paid subscriptions afterward. Researchers vividly demonstrated reciprocity norm repeatedly through psychological experiments. In one classic study, participants received unsolicited sodas from researchers before being asked to purchase raffle tickets. Remarkably, participants receiving unexpected sodas purchased dramatically more tickets compared explicitly to participants without initial gifts, clearly demonstrating subconscious reciprocity instincts powerfully influencing behaviors significantly. Understanding reciprocity norm dramatically reshapes your perspectives toward influence, persuasion, and interpersonal relationships profoundly, rather than helplessly succumbing subconsciously towards subtle obligations triggered by small gestures. Consciously pause deliberately, critically evaluating motivations explicitly. Recognize subtle manipulations deliberately leveraging subconscious reciprocity instincts intentionally, deliberately reclaiming autonomy, rationality, and deliberate decision-making confidently. Practically, strategically leveraging reciprocity norm ethically dramatically enhances persuasion, communication, and relationships profoundly, rather than explicitly demanding or persuading directly. Consciously offer small acts of kindness genuinely, authentically, and sincerely, allowing subconscious reciprocity instincts naturally guiding behaviors positively, authentically, and voluntarily. Additionally, awareness fosters empathy and compassion dramatically toward others, recognizing subconscious reciprocity instincts powerfully influencing their behaviors profoundly, rather than judging individuals harshly for seemingly irrational or obligated behaviors. Consciously recognize subconscious reciprocity instincts subtly guiding decisions instinctively, offering patience, understanding, and genuine compassion authentically. Ultimately, reciprocity norm reveals profound psychological truths about human nature powerfully. Your brain instinctively feels obligated subconsciously toward returning kindness, generosity, or gestures significantly. Recognizing this psychological phenomenon dramatically empowers deliberate resistance against subtle manipulations intentionally, exploiting subconscious reciprocity instincts powerfully, rather than helplessly surrendering subconsciously towards subtle obligations. Consciously reclaim autonomy deliberately, critically evaluating motivations explicitly, strategically leverage reciprocity norm ethically, authentically, and genuinely, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities dramatically into profound personal empowerment, deliberately, consciously, and strategically. By mastering awareness profoundly toward reciprocity norm dramatically, you confidently reclaim autonomy deliberately, navigating influence, persuasion, and interpersonal relationships strategically, authentically, and positively. Your mind, consciously reshaped deliberately by thoughtful understanding, powerfully, confidently resists subtle manipulations instinctively, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities dramatically into profound personal strengths, authentically, intentionally, and forever. Loss aversion. Hidden deep within your mind lies a powerful force that silently shapes nearly every decision you make, often without you realizing it. This profound psychological phenomenon is known as loss aversion, and it explains your instinctive tendency to fear losses far more intensely than you value equivalent gains. In other words, the pain of losing something feels dramatically stronger than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Understanding this subtle yet powerful bias reveals precisely why humans often behave cautiously, avoid risks, and cling fiercely to possessions or situations, even when better opportunities clearly await. Imagine you're playing a simple betting game. You're offered a coin toss. If it lands heads, you win 100, but if it lands tails, you lose $100. Logically, you'd assume this gamble feels balanced, an equal chance of winning or losing exactly the same amount. Yet, instinctively, something feels deeply unsettling. Your mind immediately fixates on potential loss, feeling anxiety, fear, and hesitation intensely. Surprisingly, research shows that most people refuse to take this seemingly fair bet simply because the potential pain of losing $100 significantly outweighs the potential pleasure of gaining an equal amount. This vividly demonstrates how loss aversion powerfully shapes your decisions, emotions, and behaviors, causing irrational fears and cautious hesitations subconsciously. Why does your brain instinctively fear loss so profoundly? Loss aversion evolved as a powerful survival instinct deeply embedded within human psychology. Historically, humans depended heavily upon maintaining limited resources, food, shelter, and safety for survival itself. Losing vital resources dramatically threatened survival, causing intense fear and anxiety. Your brain instinctively perceives modern losses, financial, social, or emotional, with the same intensity, triggering powerful protective instincts automatically. Businesses frequently leverage loss aversion strategically, subtly yet effectively influencing consumer behaviors powerfully. Limited time sales trigger subconscious fear of missing out, dramatically increasing urgency toward immediate purchases. Free trials activate fear toward losing newfound access, dramatically increasing subscription likelihood afterward. Politicians emphasize potential losses deliberately, triggering subconscious fears, dramatically shaping voting behaviors significantly. Researchers vividly demonstrated loss aversion repeatedly through psychological experiments. In one famous study, researchers gave participants coffee mugs randomly. Later, researchers asked participants how much money they'd require to give their mug away. Strikingly, participants consistently demanded significantly higher prices to lose mugs compared explicitly to prices they'd initially pay to acquire them. Participants instinctively valued losses dramatically higher than equivalent gains, clearly demonstrating subconscious loss aversion, powerfully influencing judgments profoundly. Understanding loss. Aversion dramatically empowers deliberate resistance against irrational fears subconsciously triggered by potential losses. Rather than instinctively avoiding risks excessively, consciously evaluate decisions rationally, deliberately balancing potential gains equally against potential losses explicitly. Recognize subconscious loss aversion, subtly exaggerating potential losses emotionally, deliberately reclaiming autonomy, rationality, and clear-headed decision-making confidently. Practically, consciously leveraging loss aversion strategically dramatically enhances persuasion, motivation, and influence profoundly, rather than explicitly emphasizing potential gains exclusively. Subtly highlight potential losses strategically, triggering subconscious loss aversion deliberately, dramatically increasing urgency, motivation, and engagement authentically, ethically, and positively. Additionally, awareness fosters empathy dramatically toward others experiencing irrational fears, anxiety, or cautious hesitations triggered subconsciously by loss aversion powerfully. Rather than harshly judging behaviors excessively cautious or hesitant, consciously recognize subconscious fears instinctively triggered emotionally, offering patience, understanding, and compassionate guidance thoughtfully. Ultimately, loss aversion reveals profound psychological truths dramatically about human nature. Your brain instinctively fears losses significantly more intensely than it values equivalent gains emotionally. Recognizing this cognitive bias dramatically reshapes perspectives toward risk, decision-making, and influence profoundly, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities significantly into profound personal strengths deliberately, consciously, and strategically, rather than helplessly surrendering subconsciously toward irrational fears, excessively cautious or hesitant. Consciously reclaim rationality deliberately, evaluating decisions thoughtfully, critically, and objectively. Strategically leverage loss, aversion ethically, triggering subconscious motivations powerfully toward genuinely positive outcomes, authentically, voluntarily, and confidently. By mastering awareness profoundly toward loss, aversion dramatically, you confidently reshape decisions deliberately, navigating risks rationally, strategically, and positively. Your mind, consciously reshaped deliberately by thoughtful understanding, powerfully, confidently transforms subconscious fears dramatically into profound personal empowerment, authentically, intentionally, and forever. Framing effect. Your mind is remarkably influenced by the subtle power of presentation. How information is worded, packaged, or framed profoundly shapes your decisions, emotions, and actions. This fascinating psychological phenomenon is known as the framing effect. It reveals how the exact same facts, outcomes, or choices can provoke entirely different responses depending solely on how they're presented. In other words, your brain doesn't just objectively evaluate information independently. It dramatically relies on subtle cues hidden within wording or context, subconsciously guiding perceptions powerfully. Imagine you're considering undergoing a crucial medical procedure. Doctors explain two identical options, but they frame them differently. The first doctor emphasizes a 90% survival rate, highlighting positive outcomes optimistically. Conversely, the second doctor describes exactly the same procedure with a 10% mortality rate, explicitly emphasizing negative outcomes pessimistically. Rationally, both options convey identical statistical information objectively, yet instinctively, your mind feels dramatically different emotions toward each. The positively framed procedure inspires hope, confidence, and optimism powerfully, whereas negatively framed presentation triggers fear, anxiety, and hesitation subconsciously. This vividly demonstrates the profound psychological power framing wields subconsciously, dramatically reshaping your emotional responses, judgments, and decisions significantly. Why does your brain instinctively respond dramatically toward framing's subtle power? Humans instinctively rely heavily upon emotional cues subconsciously to navigate complex decisions quickly. Your brain automatically associates positively framed language instinctively with desirable outcomes, subconsciously triggering optimism, confidence, and willingness dramatically. Conversely, negatively framed language instinctively triggers fear, caution, and avoidance powerfully, subtly yet profoundly guiding subconscious emotions, judgments, and decisions automatically. Businesses frequently exploit framing effect strategically, subtly, yet profoundly influencing consumer behaviors powerfully. Food products emphasizing 95% fat-free dramatically attract customers subconsciously compared explicitly to identical products labeled 5% fat negatively. Financial institutions framing fees explicitly as discounts lost subtly trigger subconscious pain dramatically stronger than identical fees labeled additional charges. Politicians deliberately emphasize positively framed statistics intentionally, subtly triggering subconscious optimism dramatically, significantly influencing voter perceptions powerfully. Researchers vividly demonstrated framing effect repeatedly through compelling psychological experiments. In one classic study, participants evaluated identical disease treatment scenarios framed differently, positively, 200 lives saved, versus negatively, 400 lives lost. Remarkably, participants consistently chose positively framed options dramatically, despite identical objective outcomes explicitly. Their minds instinctively reacted subconsciously toward subtle framing cues, emotionally, dramatically reshaping judgments, decisions, and behaviors profoundly. Understanding framing effect dramatically empowers deliberate resistance against subtle, emotional manipulations subconsciously triggered by framing powerfully, rather than helplessly reacting instinctively towards subtle wording subconsciously. Consciously pause deliberately, critically evaluating information independently, objectively, and explicitly. Recognize subconscious emotional biases subtly triggered powerfully by framing, deliberately reclaiming autonomy, rationality, and deliberate decision-making confidently. Practically, consciously leveraging framing. Effect ethically, dramatically enhances persuasion, communication, and influence profoundly, rather than explicitly communicating exclusively objective facts neutrally, subtly frame information positively, triggering subconscious optimism powerfully, dramatically enhancing motivation, engagement, and voluntary compliance authentically, ethically, and positively. Additionally, awareness fosters profound empathy dramatically toward others, influenced subconsciously by framing powerfully, rather than judging individuals harshly for seemingly irrational emotional reactions. Dramatically, consciously recognize subtle emotional cues, instinctively shaping their perceptions significantly, offering patience, understanding, and genuine compassion authentically. Ultimately, framing effect reveals profound psychological truths dramatically about human nature powerfully. Your mind instinctively relies heavily upon subtle emotional cues subconsciously, dramatically reshaping perceptions, judgments, and decisions significantly. Recognizing this cognitive phenomenon dramatically reshapes perspectives toward information, evaluation, communication, and decision-making profoundly, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities powerfully into profound personal empowerment deliberately, consciously, and strategically, rather than helplessly surrendering subconsciously towards subtle emotional manipulations. Instinctively, consciously reclaim rationality deliberately, evaluating information thoughtfully, critically, and objectively. Strategically, leverage framing effect ethically, communicating deliberately positive outcomes authentically, genuinely, and voluntarily, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities dramatically into profound personal strengths authentically, intentionally, and confidently. By mastering awareness profoundly toward framing effect dramatically, you confidently reshape perceptions deliberately, navigating communication, persuasion, and decision-making strategically, rationally, and authentically. Your mind, consciously reshaped deliberately by thoughtful understanding powerfully, confidently transforms subconscious emotional biases dramatically into profound personal empowerment, authentically, intentionally, and forever. Scarcity Principle. There's a hidden psychological force that drives you to desire something intensely, simply because it's limited or hard to get. This fascinating phenomenon is called the Scarcity Principle. It explains how your mind instinctively places higher value on things perceived as rare, exclusive, or quickly disappearing. When something feels scarce, whether it's a product, opportunity, or experience, your brain automatically elevates its importance, driving urgency and desire to possess or experience it. Imagine you're casually browsing an online store and you find a stylish jacket you like but aren't entirely sure about. You consider taking time to think about it. Suddenly, you see bold, red text stating, "Only 2 left in stock." Almost immediately, your pulse quickens, anxiety rises, and your desire to buy the jacket escalates dramatically. You no longer feel the luxury of time or deliberation. You urgently want this jacket, driven by the fear of missing out on something scarce. In mere moments, you've transitioned from mild interest to desperate need, all triggered subconsciously by the scarcity principle. But why does your brain react this way? The human mind evolved to instinctively prioritize limited resources, associating scarcity with value, survival, and necessity. Historically, resources such as food, water, and shelter were limited. Your ancestors had to compete intensely for these scarce resources to survive. Over generations, your brain developed a deeply ingrained sensitivity towards scarcity, automatically responding with intense desire and urgency whenever something appears limited or exclusive. Businesses strategically exploit the scarcity principle constantly. Think of limited time offers, flash sales, and exclusive deals. When airlines highlight only 3 seats remaining at this price, or retailers advertise offer ends in 24 hours, they're intentionally activating your scarcity-driven anxiety. These tactics significantly boost sales because your subconscious mind interprets scarcity as an urgent call to action. Marketers are fully aware that the less available something seems, the more you instinctively desire it. Researchers have vividly demonstrated this principle through psychological experiments. In one study, participants rated cookies as significantly more appealing, valuable, and delicious when fewer were available. Identical cookies perceived as abundant were rated far less favorably. Simply put, your brain instinctively believes scarce items must be inherently better, even without objective evidence. Understanding the scarcity principle empowers you profoundly. Instead of instinctively reacting with anxiety and urgency every time you encounter scarcity cues, you can pause deliberately, evaluating your decisions rationally. Recognize when marketers or sellers intentionally activate your scarcity instincts. Take conscious control over your decisions, carefully assessing whether an item or opportunity genuinely merits your desire, or if your subconscious fear of missing out is simply clouding your judgment. Practically, awareness allows you to leverage scarcity ethically in your own communication and persuasion strategies. When promoting products, events, or opportunities, authentically emphasize limited availability or exclusivity. Presenting genuine scarcity can dramatically increase perceived value, urgency, and engagement among your audience. However, using scarcity ethically and authentically matters immensely. Overusing or falsely creating scarcity can quickly damage trust and credibility. Always maintain honesty, transparency, and authenticity. When scarcity genuinely exists, communicate it clearly, helping others appreciate true value rather than merely exploiting subconscious anxiety. Additionally, recognizing scarcity's psychological power fosters deeper empathy and understanding toward others experiencing similar feelings. Rather than judging someone harshly for impulsive or urgent behaviors, understand they might be subconsciously influenced by the powerful scarcity principle. Offer patience, compassion, and supportive guidance to help others make rational decisions amidst instinctive emotional reactions. Ultimately, the scarcity principle reveals profound insights about human nature. Your mind instinctively elevates the value of anything scarce, exclusive, or limited. Mastering awareness of this principle transforms subconscious reactions into conscious decisions, helping you navigate life strategically, ethically, and confidently. Instead of surrendering helplessly to scarcity-driven anxiety, you deliberately reclaim rationality, autonomy, and personal empowerment. By consciously understanding scarcity's psychological power, you gain genuine clarity, thoughtfully evaluating choices rather than impulsively reacting. Your mind, empowered by deliberate awareness, confidently transforms subconscious vulnerability into powerful personal strength, allowing you to engage with scarcity strategically, ethically, and authentically, forever reshaping how you navigate decisions, desires, and the complexities of human psychology itself. Pygmalion Effect. Your mind holds an astonishing power, one capable of shaping not just your beliefs, but your reality itself, based purely on expectation. This fascinating psychological phenomenon, known as the Pygmalion Effect, reveals how your expectations of others profoundly influence their behavior, performance, and outcomes, often without you even realizing it. In other words, when you genuinely believe someone will succeed, you subconsciously alter your interactions with them, significantly increasing the likelihood they'll fulfill your expectations. Imagine a teacher entering a classroom at the beginning of the school year, told by administrators that certain students have extraordinary potential, destined for remarkable academic success. Unbeknownst to the teacher, these students were randomly selected without genuine evidence of superior abilities. Yet something extraordinary occurs over the months ahead. These supposedly gifted students consistently outperform their classmates, displaying exceptional academic growth and confidence. Why did this happen? The teacher's expectations unknowingly influenced their behavior toward these students, subtly offering more encouragement, attention, patience, and positive feedback. These subtle behavioral shifts, driven purely by expectation, dramatically improve the student's motivation, confidence, and performance, transforming perceived potential into reality through the power of the Pygmalion Effect. Why does your brain respond so profoundly to expectations? Humans instinctively rely on social signals, subtle cues conveyed subconsciously through interactions. When you genuinely expect someone's success, your behavior instinctively conveys confidence, positivity, and encouragement, even without explicitly stating expectations verbally. Recipients subconsciously interpret these signals, internalizing your positive beliefs, gradually adjusting their self-perception, confidence, and effort accordingly, eventually fulfilling your expectations precisely because they believe they can. Businesses and leaders frequently leverage the Pygmalion Effect strategically. Effective managers genuinely believing employees possess remarkable potential instinctively communicate confidence and positivity, dramatically increasing motivation, engagement, and performance. Conversely, leaders doubting employees' abilities subconsciously communicate negativity, doubt, or criticism subtly, undermining motivation, confidence, and productivity profoundly. Researchers vividly demonstrated the Pygmalion Effect repeatedly through compelling psychological experiments. In a famous study, researchers informed elementary teachers certain randomly selected students demonstrated remarkable intellectual potential. Remarkably, these gifted students consistently outperformed peers academically, simply because teachers genuinely believed in their capabilities. Teachers' subconscious expectations profoundly reshape their behaviors, subtly yet powerfully transforming students' academic realities. Understanding the Pygmalion Effect empowers you profoundly, revealing the astonishing power hidden within genuine expectations. Rather than passively observing others' behavior, consciously recognize your beliefs significantly shape their realities. Deliberately cultivating authentic positive expectations toward others profoundly reshapes your subconscious interactions, instinctively communicating encouragement, confidence, and positivity powerfully, dramatically, enhancing their motivation, performance, and success. Practically, consciously leverage the Pygmalion Effect ethically in relationships, education, or leadership. Genuinely believing in others' potential authentically triggers subconscious behavioral shifts, positively, subtly, yet powerfully communicating confidence and optimism instinctively, dramatically, reshaping realities deliberately, consciously, and authentically. However, ethical responsibility remains crucial. Avoiding false or insincere expectations damaging trust profoundly. Authentic belief genuinely enhances performance powerfully. False encouragement risks undermining trust, motivation, and relationships significantly. Cultivate expectations deliberately yet honestly, maintaining genuine authenticity ethically and responsibly. Additionally, understanding fosters profound empathy dramatically toward others' potential struggles or doubts significantly, rather than harshly judging someone's hesitations or insecurities. Consciously recognize your expectations profoundly influence their self-perception instinctively. Offer genuine belief, patience, and supportive encouragement authentically, subtly yet powerfully reshaping their confidence, motivation, and outcomes positively. Ultimately, the Pygmalion Effect reveals profound psychological truths dramatically about human nature powerfully. Your genuine expectations significantly shape others' behaviors, motivations, and realities. Recognizing this extraordinary psychological power dramatically reshapes perspectives toward relationships, leadership, education, and human potential profoundly, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities dramatically into profound personal empowerment, deliberately, consciously, and strategically. Rather than helplessly observing others' behaviors passively, consciously reclaim deliberate responsibility explicitly, cultivating genuine positive expectations authentically, genuinely, and ethically. Strategically, leverage the astonishing Pygmalion Effect deliberately, transforming subconscious interactions dramatically into profound personal strengths authentically, intentionally, and forever. By mastering awareness profoundly toward the Pygmalion Effect dramatically, you confidently reshape others' realities deliberately, navigating relationships, education, and leadership strategically, compassionately, and authentically. Your mind, consciously empowered deliberately by thoughtful understanding profoundly, confidently, transforms subconscious beliefs dramatically into profound personal empowerment authentically, intentionally, and forever. Backfire Effect. There's a surprising psychological force at play whenever your deeply held beliefs face a direct challenge. Instead of reconsidering your stance, you instinctively double down, believing even more strongly. This fascinating yet troubling phenomenon is called the Backfire Effect. It describes how, rather than correcting misconceptions when confronted with clear evidence, your brain often rejects or rationalizes opposing facts, reinforcing your original beliefs even more powerfully. Imagine you hold a strong political belief about a controversial topic. You confidently share your views, convinced they're grounded in truth and reason. Suddenly, someone presents undeniable factual evidence completely contradicting your position. Rationally, you'd expect this to change your mind. Instead, you feel a powerful emotional reaction, defensiveness, anger, and resistance. Rather than objectively evaluating the new evidence, your brain instinctively dismisses it or seeks flaws. Remarkably, your original belief grows even stronger, reinforced by your subconscious defense mechanisms. You've just experienced the Backfire Effect in action. Why does your brain react so irrationally when confronted with contradictory evidence? Humans deeply tie personal beliefs to their sense of identity, self-worth, and emotional stability. When opposing evidence emerges, your mind instinctively perceives it as a direct threat, not merely to your belief, but to your identity itself. Your brain automatically activates psychological defenses, rejecting contradictory facts to protect emotional stability and maintain self-consistency. This subconscious process strengthens original beliefs, effectively causing opposing evidence to backfire entirely. Researchers vividly demonstrated the Backfire Effect through compelling experiments. Participants presented with clear evidence disproving their strongly held political beliefs consistently rejected the new information, experiencing increased certainty in their original stance instead. Facts alone rarely convince people to reconsider entrenched beliefs. Instead, opposing evidence triggered emotional defenses, strengthening original misconceptions even more. Businesses, politicians, and media unintentionally trigger the backfire effect frequently, directly challenging strongly held consumer beliefs or opinions typically results in stubborn defensiveness rather than persuasion. Marketing campaigns explicitly correcting misinformation often backfire, reinforcing incorrect perceptions rather than correcting them. Politicians passionately disputing opponents' beliefs inadvertently strengthen their supporters' original views significantly. Understanding the backfire effect profoundly reshapes your perspectives toward persuasion, communication, and beliefs. Rather than confronting misconceptions aggressively or directly, consciously approach sensitive topics with subtlety, empathy, and emotional intelligence. Explicitly challenging deeply held beliefs typically backfires dramatically, reinforcing misconceptions powerfully rather than correcting them. Gentle, patient dialogue, gradually introducing alternative viewpoints, significantly reduces emotional defensiveness, fostering genuine openness toward reconsideration authentically. Practically, consciously leverage understanding of the backfire effect strategically in persuasive communication. Rather than explicitly confronting beliefs directly, subtly offer alternative viewpoints positively and empathetically, gradually reshaping perceptions gently yet powerfully over time. Patient, respectful dialogue significantly reduces emotional defensiveness, allowing genuine reconsideration authentically rather than triggering subconscious resistance instinctively. Additionally, awareness fosters profound empathy dramatically toward others experiencing subconscious defensiveness powerfully triggered by opposing evidence emotionally. Rather than harshly judging stubbornness or resistance, consciously recognize powerful psychological defenses instinctively protecting their identity subconsciously. Offer patience, understanding, and compassionate dialogue genuinely, gradually guiding openness authentically rather than triggering subconscious emotional reactions defensively. Ultimately, the backfire effect reveals profound psychological truths dramatically about human nature powerfully. Your mind instinctively protects identity subconsciously by rejecting contradictory evidence emotionally. Recognizing this cognitive phenomenon dramatically reshapes perspectives toward persuasion, dialogue, and beliefs profoundly, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities powerfully into profound personal empowerment deliberately, consciously, and strategically, rather than helplessly triggering subconscious defensiveness unintentionally. Consciously reclaim deliberate responsibility explicitly, approaching sensitive topics subtly, empathetically, and positively. Strategically, leverage understanding profoundly, fostering genuine openness, authentically, gradually, and compassionately, transforming subconscious resistance dramatically into profound personal strengths, authentically, intentionally, and forever. By mastering awareness profoundly toward the backfire effect dramatically, you confidently reshape persuasive communication deliberately, navigating sensitive beliefs strategically, compassionately, and authentically. Your mind, consciously empowered deliberately by thoughtful understanding profoundly, confidently transforms subconscious defensiveness dramatically into profound personal empowerment, authentically, intentionally, and forever. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Your beliefs possess an almost magical ability to shape reality, not just influencing how you perceive the world, but actively creating the outcomes you anticipate. This astonishing psychological phenomenon is known as the self-fulfilling prophecy. It occurs when your expectations subconsciously influence your actions, decisions, and behaviors, ultimately causing your initial belief to come true, simply because you believed it would. Imagine you're preparing for a critical job interview. You're convinced you lack the necessary qualifications and confidence. Despite diligently preparing, your negative expectation profoundly influences your behavior. You enter the interview nervously, avoid making eye contact, hesitate to answer questions confidently, and stumble over your words. The interviewer, sensing your discomfort and uncertainty, perceives you as unqualified or unsuitable for the role. In the end, your initial fear of failure becomes reality, not because you genuinely lacked qualifications, but because your negative expectations dramatically shaped your behavior, ensuring failure occurred precisely as predicted. But what if you had entered the interview firmly believing you were perfectly qualified and destined for success? Your positive expectation would subconsciously influence your behavior in dramatically different ways. You'd speak confidently, maintain engaging eye contact, clearly express your qualifications, and create a powerful first impression. The interviewer, perceiving genuine confidence and competence, would instinctively respond positively, significantly increasing your chance of success. Once again, your initial expectation, this time positive, would become reality, driven solely by your subconscious behaviors. Why does your brain instinctively respond to expectations in this powerful, self-fulfilling way? Humans rely heavily on subconscious beliefs to guide their behaviors, decisions, and interactions. Your expectations create subtle cues, body language, tone, confidence levels that profoundly shape how others perceive and interact with you. Those interactions further reinforce your original beliefs, gradually creating the exact outcome you initially anticipated. Researchers vividly demonstrated the self-fulfilling prophecy through compelling psychological experiments. In one influential study, teachers were randomly informed that certain students possessed extraordinary intellectual potential. Remarkably, these randomly selected gifted students consistently outperformed classmates simply because teachers' positive expectations subconsciously shaped their interactions, feedback, and encouragement. These subtle yet powerful behavioral shifts dramatically influence students' self-perceptions, confidence, and performance, causing their academic achievements to align precisely with teachers' original expectations. Businesses, educators, and leaders strategically leverage the self-fulfilling prophecy deliberately. Managers genuinely believing employees possess remarkable potential instinctively communicate positivity, encouragement, and confidence, dramatically enhancing motivation, engagement, and productivity. Conversely, leaders doubting employees subconsciously communicate negativity, skepticism, or criticism subtly yet powerfully, undermining motivation, performance, and confidence significantly. Understanding the self-fulfilling prophecy profoundly reshapes your perspectives toward beliefs, expectations, and behaviors. Rather than passively observing events, consciously recognize your subconscious expectations powerfully shape outcomes. Deliberately cultivate authentic positive beliefs genuinely, reshaping your subconscious behaviors dramatically, significantly enhancing your likelihood of achieving desired outcomes authentically and powerfully. Practically, strategically, leverage the self-fulfilling prophecy ethically in your daily life. Before critical events, consciously develop positive, realistic expectations explicitly, subtly, yet profoundly shaping subconscious behaviors positively. Recognize negative beliefs dramatically sabotage outcomes subconsciously, actively replacing negative expectations deliberately with authentic positivity and genuine confidence. However, maintaining genuine authenticity remains crucial. Unrealistic or insincere expectations risk disappointment or frustration significantly. Cultivate expectations realistically yet positively, maintaining genuine authenticity ethically, thoughtfully, and responsibly. Additionally, awareness fosters profound empathy dramatically toward others experiencing outcomes influenced powerfully by subconscious expectations significantly. Rather than harshly judging failures or setbacks, consciously recognize negative expectations, profoundly influencing their behaviors subconsciously, offering patience, understanding, and compassionate encouragement genuinely. Ultimately, the self-fulfilling prophecy reveals profound psychological truths dramatically about human nature powerfully. Your subconscious expectations significantly shape outcomes authentically and dramatically. Recognizing this extraordinary psychological phenomenon profoundly reshapes perspectives toward beliefs, interactions, and reality itself, transforming subconscious vulnerabilities dramatically into profound personal empowerment, deliberately, consciously, and strategically, rather than helplessly allowing negative expectations subconsciously to sabotage outcomes. Instinctively, consciously reclaim deliberate responsibility explicitly, cultivating genuine positive beliefs authentically, genuinely, and powerfully. Strategically, leverage the astonishing power hidden within expectations deliberately, transforming subconscious behaviors dramatically into profound personal strengths authentically, intentionally, and forever. By mastering awareness profoundly toward the self-fulfilling prophecy dramatically, you confidently reshape realities deliberately, navigating beliefs, interactions, and outcomes strategically, compassionately, and authentically. Your mind, consciously empowered deliberately by thoughtful understanding, profoundly, confidently transforms subconscious expectations dramatically into profound personal empowerment, authentically, intentionally, and forever.